Okay, good evening. It is now 7 p.m., and I will call to order the Wellfleet Select Board meeting of September 10th. We will begin with announcements, open session, and public comments. I want to remind everyone that the public comments must be brief. The board will not deliberate or vote on any matter raised solely during announcements and public comments. Any announcements or comments from the board? Helen?
On September 18th, from 7 to 8:30 in Chatham at the Chatham Community Center, the Massachusetts Shellfish Initiative Group are holding a meeting on what they describe as strategic planning. And for people in the shellfishing industry and others, this is probably going to be a very important meeting for people to show up at, and I'm going to try to go. I'm saying that in case others on the board want to go. Courtney has to know about it.
Okay. Anyone else from the board? Comments, announcements? Yes, Mr. Hort?
I would just like to take this time to introduce our new Assistant Town Administrator, Mike Travato. Mike started the day after Labor Day. He's going to be a great addition to the town, and we're happy to have him here.
Thanks, Mike. And the board should all go in and introduce themselves to him and chat a bit.
He's met everybody.
He has. You met everybody? Great. Good, good, good. All right. Thank you. And same with the public. Okay, are there any...
But be nice, at least for his first month.
Yes, yes. Don't overwhelm him. I went in and have a whole list of things I want him to do. So, any announcements from the public? Yes, Ms. Grout-Thomas?
Yes, it's a brief announcement. As a sign of winter coming, the annual flu clinic has been scheduled for Friday, October 4th, here at the Wellfleet Senior Center, and it is for any Wellfleet resident age 18 and over. And if you happen to be 65 or over, the extra strength vaccine is available for that as well. Call and make an appointment. It's between 2 p.m. and 4 p.m. on Friday, October 4th. Thank you.
Thank you. Steve, are you up first, or, yep, go, either way. Excuse me?
Thank you, but Pete is going to speak.
Okay.
Hi,
All right.
Peter Cook. Yeah. So we're here representing the concerned citizens for a sensible Wellfleet bikeway, and we just will be very brief. Wanted to let you know that we are taking a petition to Governor Baker requesting two things. First of all, action to halt state plans, which are underway, to do a bikeway project adjoining Route 6 in Wellfleet. And then second, to have the state collaborate with the town to come up with better and safer bikeway alternatives. The petition has 1,273 signatures as of this past weekend. 1,036 of those are handwritten signatures on paper copies that have been in businesses around town. 237 of them are online at wellfleetbikepetition.org. The petitions, just so you know, the signatories do include some transportation leaders and technical experts here in the state. In addition, of those 1,273, over 1,000 are constituents of Governor Baker's here in Massachusetts. A little over 800 are from the Outer Cape, from Orleans to Provincetown, and almost 600 are actually from here in Wellfleet. So wanted you to be aware of that. We believe our petition dovetails really nicely with Article 44, which passed in the annual town meeting in April. We're also encouraged by a letter that was emailed to the Select Board by Mr. Bob Sloan last Friday. In addition to being a longtime summer resident of Wellfleet, he's a former Assistant Secretary of Transportation here in Massachusetts. And he's been observing the issue here regarding the bikeway and put together a very nice summation of the situation and also a proposal to the Select Board to initiate a teaming or partnership with the state and with the National Seashore and others. We're very encouraged by his letter and hope that the board will give it full consideration. So thank you.
Thank you. Any other announcements from the audience? Okay. We will move on to tax classification hearing. Ms. Vale.
Good evening. This is the annual tax classification hearing where the Select Board needs to decide how to allocate the tax levy among the various classes of property: residential, open space, commercial, industrial, and personal property. Okay. So your first option is you need to decide whether you are going to retain a unified tax rate, where residential and commercial and all the other classes would pay the same dollars per thousand. So if you want that to happen, I would need a motion with a favorable vote to make the residential factor the numeral 1 for fiscal 2020.
Okay, any questions from the board? Comments? Ms. Wilson?
I have a comment. It's pretty much what I said last year. Neither myself nor really anybody else has any way of knowing what the incomes and the, financial background for any of our residents or non-residents, so-called, are. We also have no way, and I don't want any way, of ascertaining how much time a resident actually spends here or a non-resident. That's hard. We could never track that from year to year, and it varies. I'm aware of people who are residents that really need the money here and have land that's highly taxed, and they have a hard time meeting that, and they've saved money with this as of last year. And they'll save money this year if they want to apply for this, if they've already applied. I forget when the deadline was. Wait a minute, Nancy. I also am aware of people with very little money who rent their second homes here so that they can pay the mortgage on a place that they're deeply, deeply committed to. Maybe they inherited it, maybe it was bought in the 50s by their family. There's a whole lot of stories who have not complained about this, but whose taxes went way up. And they don't have a good way of paying for it. Not every second home owner owns a second home because they're wealthy. And therefore, last year, I voted to keep this the way it had been forever up until last year, and I respect the votes of my fellow board members. I am going to vote again to have it be unified so that everybody's taxes are the same.
May I clarify?
Yeah?
That's the next
Yeah.
item on the agenda.
Oh, oops.
But to that,
But you explained it.
I don't have to do
Yeah,
it again.
Yeah, you don't.
Sorry.
so the vote to retain a unified tax rate is to keep commercial and residential the same, as opposed to in some large communities where they shift the burden to commercial
Oh, it's
to lower
classes.
the burden on residential. But actually, we discovered last year, because we voted it in for the first time, when you vote in a residential exemption, that effectively splits the tax rate, because the residential exemption only affects residential properties. So the residential property tax rate went up, and commercial and personal property stayed lower.
Stayed
So
low,
even though you voted a unified tax rate, the residential exemption effectively splits it. So
Got
just
that.
as a point of clarification.
Mike, did you have a question or comment?
No, I was just going to comment that that was the next
Yeah.
item on the,
Any other questions, comments? Justina?
I thought that the assessor's recommendation of keeping the the residential and business the same was a good one. There's a lot of small businesses in town and who struggle. It's a challenging business climate, and I think, therefore, we want to be supportive of the business challenges that businesses face in a seasonal economy and keep the one rate.
Yeah, thank you.
So I can make a motion.
You may.
I'll make a motion that you need,
Any,
Dan.
yeah, nobody else from the board? No,
Madam
okay.
Chair, one more thing. I support what Justina said, but
Okay.
I sort of did it by saying I wanted to keep it all the same for every class, so.
Well, we'll see how you vote. That's the support. Go ahead, Kathleen.
Dan, I'm not sure if I'm going to do this correctly. I move that we keep the same tax for the residential commercial.
Second.
Is that enough, Dan?
What your motion actually should be is I move to make the residential factor the numeral 1 for FY 2020.
Oh, boy.
Here, it's right here.
fine,
Let me change it to 2020.
I move to make the residential factor the numeral 1 for FY 2019,
Second.
Wait, 2020.
It'll
2020.
Yeah,
Yeah.
thank you.
Okay, all in favor? Okay, thank you.
yeah.
Good. Oh, I'm sorry, was there a second? Yes, Helen seconded. Good, all right, sorry. Okay, moving on to the residential tax exemption.
Option number 1. I want to just read this, but there is a residential exemption available to people who are domiciled in Wellfleet. And that effectively, well, it raises the tax rate for all residential properties. What it is the selectmen can vote to exempt up to 35% of the average value of the residential class. So that's single families, condos, mixed use, vacant land, unbuildable land. You find an average, and then the selectmen can vote to exempt up to 35%. Last year, you voted 20%. It does raise the tax rate for all residential properties, but then the people that get the exemption, it lowers their tax bill. And it unfortunately raises it for those who are not eligible for the exemption, which are second homeowners.
Justina?
I'm going to vote for this for the same reason I did last year. First of all, because of the high number of second homeowners, the benefit to year-rounders, if I remember correctly, and Dan, tell me if I'm wrong here, but for a $300,000 house, it was somewhere around, was a significant number, right?
Yes.
Yeah, it was, and whereas for a second homeowner, it's much less. So it's not really a burden, as I see it, for many second homeowners. And I think that in a town that really has to struggle to keep its middle class, to keep young families with children, to attract town employees like police and town administration, for example, who often can't even afford to move to Wellfleet. We have a bit of a crisis in keeping workforce housing and retaining young people. And so this residential tax is a useful policy tool. And no tool is going to be perfect. There may be people who've had second home in their house, in their family for generations and have to rent and struggle, but on aggregate, it's a good policy for Wellfleet's policy goals of retaining the middle class and retaining our workforce, including our town government employees. So I strongly hope we'll all vote for this again.
And Kathleen?
Yeah, I just want to add to that, in the future, for coastal resort communities very similar to Wellfleet, this is going to be status quo. This is the only way that we're going to find some sort of equality with regard to the disparate differences in income that come our way. We go from 30,000 people in August, where the money, the capita per square foot in Wellfleet will just blow your mind. And then we go to January and February here with 2,900 or 732 people who don't have jobs and are barely paying the bills. We're no different than any other coastal community. This is how it goes. So I do support this as well.
Yes, Michael?
Yeah, I'd also like to just point out that Wellfleet has one of the lowest tax rates in the state. And the shift, I'd like to reiterate what Justina had said before, there's more second homeowners than there are homeowners in the town. So the amount that a residential homeowner would save compared to what a second homeowner will pay is the second homeowner will pay a smaller amount than the residential homeowner will save in taxes. And I know it's not a ton of money either way. I mean, it's not going to save the town from a housing crisis, but it's important. And honestly, I think it should be the maximum 35%. Second home ownership has driven up the cost of property in this town to an unattainable price for most families. And so those who do get in there, you know, are impacted by the property tax. It's a burden, you know, based on their property value. It's still relatively low, I know, and I appreciate that this town has kept its taxes low, but this seems like a no-brainer to me to go forward.
Any comments or questions from the audience? Okay. Well said, everybody. I think we covered it all. I guess after Mike's suggestion of 35%, I think we should redeclare that the amount, I'm for the 20%, same as last year. I think it's sufficient. But if somebody in their motion wants to change that, they may. Who would like to make a motion?
May I just make a quick
Yes.
comment? Not that the board has any recommendation, but just as a person, I think a jump from 20 to 35 would be a little draconian. We are in the first year of this program. It's going to take us 3 years to get it right. And, because we're still working on people bringing their paperwork in, Mike. And let's see how this falls out. The exemption last year was $832.56, which is substantial. And it looks to be, from our preliminary numbers, well, the exempted amount was $107,705, which added up to $832.56. From our preliminary numbers this year, it looks like the exemption will go up to $110,664. So that's going to be a bigger break there, depending on how what happens with our tax rate. But, I mean, your vote is your vote, but
thank
I
you.
would just say, can we see how this falls out a little bit?
I agree. Just since we're on TV, could you state to the audience and the people looking at the TV what they need to do to register or qualify for the
Right.
residential tax exemption?
So the way it went down last year, we didn't have time to do the program properly. So we guessed who might be domiciled, gave out 900 exemptions, and then asked people to bring their paperwork in. So most people have done that, some have not. So Dan did a great job of getting the word out on the website and Facebook, and people have been trickling in. But if people did receive the exemption last year but have not brought in their paperwork, they will not receive it on the fall tax bill. And all we're asking for is first page of your mass tax return. We are not going to keep it, we're just going to look at it. A copy of your driver's license and your vehicle registration, because we're trying to physically link you to that address. And the problem has been that probably 75% of people have a P.O. box. All their stuff has a P.O. box on it. So we need documentation that proves you
Yeah.
live at that house.
And what is the deadline for that?
We probably won't have a tax bill for another couple of weeks, so if
Yeah,
people
so-
could get their paperwork in within the next 2 weeks, then we can put it, if they qualify, put it on the fall tax bill. Otherwise, we will have to take it off of the spring tax bill, like we did last year for people that didn't get the exemption. But technically speaking, they have until April 1st to apply.
Okay, good.
And that information is all on the front page of the
Yeah.
town's website, so
Okay.
anybody who wants to look, they can look there.
Yeah, great.
I just have one more comment. I did say 35%. I would like to see that. I did not mean currently, at the moment, immediately.
yeah.
Just to clarify that. Yeah.
Good, thank you.
Can
Okay,
make
may I have a motion?
I move to approve the adoption of a residential tax exemption of 20% for fiscal year 2020.
Is there a second?
Second.
All in favor? Opposed? One opposed? Thank you. Thank you, Nancy.
We
Oh,
just have
we
two
have
more
that
little
other one, yep.
boring ones to do. The open space option, which we're not supposed to have a recommendation, but all of our open space is covered by other programs, whether it's a chapter program, a private organization like the Audubon Society or the Wellfleet Conservation Trust. So we don't really have any private open space that might benefit from this program. We're pretty much covered
Other ways, yeah,
otherwise, and they're all tax exempt.
okay.
So you can take action, you can take no action.
Yeah, we just take no, well, does anybody want to take action? No. Yeah, okay, so we'll just take no action.
Okay.
I can't
And the
assume.
last option is the small business exemption, where an amount up to 10% of the assessed value of a small business, which is defined as less than 10 employees and an assessed value of less than $1 million, may be deducted. And then the amounts that are exempted would be shifted to the businesses that are not considered small. And as far as I know, all our businesses in Wellfleet are
Yeah.
small. So,
Close enough,
So
yeah.
no action.
Does that agree, no
Yeah,
action?
No action.
No action, no action, okay.
Madam Chair?
okay.
Yes, do you have a
Yes.
comment?
Yes, I do have a comment. It was disturbing to me that on the option 1 for the residential exemption, there was no recommendation from the Board of Assessors. Last year, we got a very clear recommendation.
Right.
And
Learned at school that the board is not supposed to make a recommendation.
Yeah, they're not supposed to.
so that's
yeah.
good to know. Thank you. That's, you know,
Have no
it was a
opinion.
reasonable question, therefore. Yeah, thank you.
Okay, any questions from the audience? No, we already made the motion, right? No, we took no action, okay. We're done,
Done with that.
okay, thank you. Justina, do you have,
It was really helpful to get your layout of the facts, and it was nice and concise, so thank
The
you.
memo?
Yeah, the memo you wrote.
yeah, very important.
Nice work.
Okay,
You
thank
may not make a recommendation, but you do explain it to us.
thank you.
Thank you. Okay, moving on to SPAT, one-day beer and wine license. And I suppose while you're up there, does the board mind if we also then take into review their use of town property? Is that on here? Why isn't this on here?
It's not on here.
It's not on here.
tonight's
It's on,
agenda.
it's,
Town Hall parking lot, SPAT, October 12th, it's item B.
oh, it's under business?
Yeah.
No.
No, it's under
Use-
use of town property, B.
Item B.
Oh, Marina, I'm looking at Marina first and not SPAT. Okay, there it is. Does anybody
what do you
mind if
wanna
we
do, combine
talk
the
them?
two?
Yeah, not combine them, but take them all, so these two guys can come at once. Is that good with everyone?
Yeah,
Move
but-
that off the agenda? Yes?
but two separate votes.
Yes, of course.
Thank you.
Okay, so this is, yep, come on up and introduce yourselves to the audience. And, yep, so this is for the one-day beer and wine license for the oyster crawl?
Art and Oyster Crawl.
Art and oyster crawl.
I'm Michelle Inslee, Director of Wellfleet SPAT. I'm Katie Cushman, I'm the Volunteer Coordinator for SPAT.
So just for the audience, you want to explain for the audience, remind them what this is if they don't remember from last year?
Sure, this is a second-year event, and it's an opportunity to celebrate two of what we perceive as Wellfleet's treasures, art and oysters. And so it actually comes out of this goal to involve the galleries in the Oyster Fest, but because of traffic patterns and people, it was not possible. So we came up with this event last year, and it was really successful. We had 4 galleries involved. This year, we're planning to have 5. At each of the 5 galleries, there'll be a raw bar operated by a shellfisherman, so people can engage with the shellfisherman directly, engage with the product, and with the brand in a real close way. And then there'll be a wine and beer bar also, and then people can enjoy oysters and sip some wine and look at art.
Kathleen?
Yeah, one question, how many galleries are involved, and are they each going to have a wine and beer bar?
Yes.
Okay, so this license, that you want between 5 and 8 is going to cover multiple locations?
Yes.
Guess that's
and
the
it's
question.
really tastings, maybe you could say that. Those are
Right, so
tastings.
last year we had 4, and they're all sort of aligned with each other. And then there are other they're more supporting galleries that can partake, so the Newcomb gift shop and gallery had a whole chocolate thing going on, which was wonderful because people,
But are they serving alcohol?
those ones are not, or they can on their own.
Only the five.
Only the five that you mentioned that are kind of all in a row are serving alcohol.
Burdick, Cove,
Hold on.
Left Bank, The
Hold
Works,
on.
and Harmon.
Burdick,
It's in the.
It's in there. What was the fourth one you said besides Harmon?
Harmon?
The
And what-
Works, Left Bank,
The
Cove.
Works, okay. I just didn't hear you, okay.
Madam Chair. Last year, I asked for this too. For us to make a motion to allow this, we need the names of those galleries. So it's the Burdick Gallery, the Cove Gallery.
Yeah, it's right here.
I haven't seen that. That
I
wasn't,
thought it was in the application.
It's in,
It is on the application.
Madam Chair, through you. Michelle, if you would be
just
so
wait, let
kind.
Courtney is explaining, it's,
Bulletin 2, under describe activity including purpose.
For the-
5 galleries will be.
It's not on their agenda.
This is in the packet.
It isn't.
So we go from Burdick on Bank down to
Just
Cove,
list them quickly. Burdick,
Burdick.
Cove,
Cove, Left Bank,
I didn't get that.
The Works, and Harmon. So we're just basically
Hold
going
on,
in a
Left
line.
Bank,
The Works,
The Works, and Harmon.
yeah. So it's a-
Okay,
a
good.
nice-
That's easy.
We had a
Just-
wonderful time last year. I think about 55 people came, and it was a huge success.
It's
And people
okay.
had their little flashlights, and
Doesn't matter.
then we hope they go out to dinner afterwards.
Okay.
I'm just looking
So,
to see.
This year we're holding it on a Saturday, which will
Be better for galleries and.
It is
and
on a
for-
Saturday, right?
Yes,
Yeah.
yep.
And, Madam Chair, a
So
question?
it is on the use of town property application.
I did not get that in my packet, which is an oversight. It's nobody's fault. It's fine. I didn't
have it
get.
now.
I do. In other words,
Oh, you got, that's what, oh,
I
I'm
didn't
looking at you
see
having
this,
it.
otherwise I wouldn't be
Okay,
taking
all
our
right.
time with this, but it
Okay.
should be in the motion. Second question, it says on the,
So I do want to keep this separate. This is on the liquor license right now, right? You wanted to keep them separate. We are keeping them separate. So let's discuss the liquor license first.
Is your second question to the liquor license?
it was related to both, and I'll hold it.
Okay. So any questions on the one-day liquor license? Yes,
I don't have a question, I have a comment.
okay, sure.
I think that's great that you're working with the galleries and pulling them in some foot traffic. I'm sure they appreciate that. Because sometimes I think it's challenging for the merchants that aren't in the Oyster Fest itself.
Yes.
And so, you know, for some shoulder season event that they can grab onto, I'm sure that's great.
Thank you, we're excited too.
And it also attracts some people who wouldn't otherwise come to Oyster Fest because it's a little bit busier. And so we found that some people who are interested in, you know, the town and what we do and stuff, but wouldn't necessarily come on the next weekend.
Yes, like I said, it's more of an intimate setting where people can really engage
Nice.
with the shellfishermen, with the brand, with the art really closely.
So this probably does have to do with the liquor license. It's going to have its use of town property. How many restrooms are you going to provide?
We'll ask our trash hauler, but I think 2 or 3, I don't know. I'll ask him. The one question that we did have is, there was a feeling to leave them through the Oyster Fest. So I was thinking this year it might be nice to do that. And we'd like to put them in the town lot right next to the Customs House. And maybe we can even lock them for the week, but just leave them there so they're there for the Oyster Fest, because we use that lot for bicycle parking. And it would be nice for the cyclists to arrive and be able to use the restroom, or anybody walking down the street from the pier.
Yeah, I think restrooms, because especially in the evening, the galleries are not going to be providing them because you want
No.
them for the oystermen to wash their
Serve
hands.
safe, yeah, absolutely.
And really, they're not going to be going to restaurants necessarily. They'll be doing that. So we could check with, I'm not sure who, but I think we have to provide more than just 2 restrooms.
Yeah, Madam Chairman?
Yes.
Okay, is there a guideline on that?
I don't know. That's what I was looking
That's
to
why I
our
would
town
ask our
administrator,
hauler.
but he intentionally has a bank clerk. I don't know. Anybody know about restrooms?
Madam
Board of
Chair,
Health. Suzanne, wait, Suzanne has her hand up about that. And possibly at the pier also, if you anticipate a lot of people on this crawl.
Our 100 people is our maximum.
Oh, you limit
Yes,
it?
yeah.
Okay. Suzanne?
It's 2 restrooms. They're going to have 100 people, 2 restrooms will be more than adequate. Because
Okay.
the formula is 1 for every 200 people per day.
200 people.
Thank you.
You're welcome.
Really?
So,
Okay.
Question? Madam Chair, through you to Michelle, what you're asking us is, you're going to be providing 2 restrooms for this particular event, you know, where you want them cited, but you're asking if we can leave them there for the week, so that the following weekend they're there for Oyster Fest.
Yeah.
And not have the hauler come in and bring them back and forth. I would say that that would be a question for the town administrator. I don't know if the select board can answer that at this time. That's a logistical question that maybe Mr. Hort can answer for you down the line.
Okay.
I have no problem with it, as long as they're locked and won't get vandalized over that week. And I congratulate you on doing this event another year. Thank you.
So I'm remembering too that last year you had, again, well, let's just get on with the liquor license first, okay? So can I have a motion about
Yes.
the alcohol license?
I move to approve a one-day beer and wine license on Saturday, October 12th, 2019, from 5 to 8 for SPAT at the Burdick Cove, Left Bank, The Works, and Harmon Galleries.
Second.
All in favor? Great. And obviously you know that they need temporary food permits and you know all that stuff.
Yes, thank you.
Okay, so moving on to
Use of town.
use of town property for this oyster crawl, arts and oyster crawl. Any comments or questions from the board? So I have a, so with this, you know, we've got the chair of our parking task force here. Even in the fall, parking is a biggie. And between Oyster Fest and this important weekend, even though we don't get as many people for Columbus weekend as we do, we've got to consider that all the businesses use parking and need parking, not just use parking, but need parking. And bathrooms. So Oyster Fest, how many restrooms do you provide? You must provide a lot.
I have to look back at an invoice
You-
a lot.
And there's some
Tons.
at the pier, right, for
Yes,
Oyster Fest?
Yep.
And
And the
in
parking
Town
lots, the
Hall.
beach parking lots, I mean, they're all over the place.
Okay, yeah. So I just want you to consider, I'm not sure how, but if this, not if, with the extra people, I don't know if it's necessary. If you're saying you only have 100, what we have to start doing is we have to start encouraging people to carpool, you know, things like that, but also to use lots and walk down, using the main lots and walk down, or, I don't know. Do you know what I mean? Just kind of observe how it goes. And, I mean, if you're having 2 bathrooms, 2 restrooms in the smaller parking lot next to the Customs House, that's going to take up 4 parking spaces there, I would guess.
Well, we were also actually wanting to put a tent up there.
Well, so that was going to be my second
Yeah,
suggestion,
so-
where you said on Bank Street. Is that by
I
the old Soul?
thought the town lot, because last year we had people gather at the Masons Lodge, and it's a little small for if we have 100 people that show up. It has big steep stairs going down, so
Yeah.
it's of concern to me. And then they allowed us, it was terrific that we rented it. It was great that we used it, but we used it for this small window of time, and then people arrived late, because people do. I mean, it's a 3-hour event. They could really, it doesn't have a specific start time, it's a stroll, so people can come whenever they
Right.
want. And when they did arrive, the building was locked. So then they arrived to a locked building. So our idea this year is to have a reception tent that's lit, you know, maybe some solar lanterns, we're working out those logistics, and it'll be staffed the whole time. People could learn about the event, they could learn about SPAT, about Wellfleet, you know, about the Oyster Fest that's coming up. So our idea would be to have a tent and a couple porta potties in that public lot, but the tent, of course, would come down, just the porta potties would stay. So it wouldn't necessarily, be that much parking there. There is the little Mason's lot right nearby. And this is the type of event I really feel that people are going to come in groups. I mean, certainly couples, it's the type of thing people would come with another.
Could you ask the Masons to put the tent there so that we can keep our public parking?
Actually, last year, people parked in both.
Mm-hmm.
And so I was just thinking it'd be good for the Masons if people parked there and they could make a little money.
Wait, so it would be good for the Masons to what?
To have,
money.
to make some money on the
And,
parking.
and use their parking lot,
Yeah.
not the town's parking lot?
Yeah.
Yeah, I think that would be, I think that would be a good idea.
That was part of our reason to utilize that building, because it's such an intriguing
It is,
landmark
I
in
know.
town.
Yeah.
But the stairs are pretty
I
steep,
know, I
and then
know.
that people arriving late, I just felt
Yeah.
like we needed a presence on the street the whole night. Like, we need a reception tent.
Yeah,
So would that be, I'm sorry,
go ahead.
would that be in the Masonic Hall parking lot that you put the
Well,
tent?
we were just proposing that it's in the town lot, adjacent to the porta potties, and that the Masonic lot could be used for public parking, and where people put a donation in that little metal box.
Why do you need a tent?
Well, she just said.
Because it's evening, and it'll be dark, and it's
But I
rain
don't
or
understand
shine.
why they can't just go to the galleries
We give
as,
them a packet, a map, and some information.
and that couldn't happen in one of the
We
galleries?
could, I think it's kind of nice to have everyone come together.
We also divvy the people up so that they don't, all 100 people arrive at one gallery for occupancy limits. So at that tent, we would greet people, would check people off that have pre-sale tickets and say, okay, now these 10 people, they go to this gallery, and the next 10 go to the other gallery. And we kind of distribute people evenly. And that's the way we start. And then after that, it just sort of evened itself out.
Justina?
Yeah, the reason that I asked you, and I'm sure you've got well-thought-through answers on why you need a tent, is that now it's not just the town parking spaces that, I guess the Masonic Hall will have you'll take their parking, but Janet was saying that parking's at a premium, and so we're not just, so now we're going to have a tent on how many parking spots?
Yeah, I think, so what are you planning on doing with the Masonic Hall parking lot? Nothing?
Nothing. We wouldn't be
So
our,
didn't you just say that it would be good to for them to make a little money and that you could put the tent there and the porta potties there even?
well, we'd have to ask
We'd have to
permission.
ask
I don't know
them.
that they go for the.
So what I'm saying is I want to keep our parking space open.
Okay. Well, it's not enough parking to accommodate the whole group of people, though.
Of course
That's
not,
the other
of
thing.
course not. But there's probably like 15 parking spaces. If you put porta potties there, we're down to 10 parking spaces. You leave the porta potties there, and then there's like 10 parking spaces for a whole week for the other businesses down there. And even, people, again, it's going to be Columbus weekend, and we just need all the parking we can get. So, anybody agree with me or disagree or have a comment?
I
Mike?
kind of disagree. I mean, I feel like the parking's staggered around town. Columbus Day weekend's busy, but it's not like August. And what size tent are you planning on putting up?
I was thinking a 10 by 20.
A 10 by 20 tent, so that would be,
The
and where would
parking
you locate it?
I hadn't really gone down there to site it yet.
Well, each of those parking lots, that tent would take up 3/4 of it. No?
So a space is, I think, 8
How
foot
much
wide.
do you think,
maybe?
Denny? I'll take Denny's word for how much space it is.
I'd say 4 or so.
For what?
4 spaces,
A 10 by 20?
10 by 20, you get a 8-foot wide, 8 to 10 foot wide parking lot, and a 20-foot long parking area. It's not much.
It's half, isn't it? I mean, you can't park next to the tent either, so you have to give them space.
Madam Chair.
Okay.
Madam Chair, with all due respect for Dennis O'Connell, can he please
the
identify himself and
microphone.
speak into the microphone?
I just
so that-
wanted a quick answer.
Yeah, but there is no such thing.
Okay.
My name's Dennis O'Connell. I'm the chair of the Parking Task Force, the second. And as far as the amount of space, I think a standard parking lot space, Jay, do you know?
Yeah.
8 by 18. So, I mean,
So 8,
you're
yeah.
talking 4 at the most.
Right, but then, yeah, I know, but then you have to give space around it, so.
You
I'm
know,
just saying, those aren't big parking lots.
it's not my place, but I would suggest that you put the tent close to the road so that people don't walk through the parking area.
True, true. That's what actually,
Yeah.
after I answered, I said, of course, it's going to be right up close to the road so people see it. And, you know, ideally, it'd be nice if even that's kind of an open area so people could gather.
So last year, people parked a little bit at the Custom House, the town lot, a little bit at the Masonic Lodge, a bunch at Mid-Cape, a few behind Left Bank, a few up at the Town Hall, and a few at the pier, and we had 55 people.
Yeah. Okay.
Nobody complained, but
Kathleen?
Yeah, I don't have a problem with this at all. I think that using a tent as a place to meet and greet makes sense. It will give the event visibility. I don't foresee that, you know, from 5 until 8 p.m., you're going to infringe that badly on that parking area. Yeah, so I wish you the best with this, you know.
Justina?
I think this is a great event. My bottom line would be, for the business that you bring in for these galleries, I'm looking at it from a business point of view, from the business that you're bringing in for the galleries and the spillover effect, it's always good for businesses when cool stuff's happening
Yeah.
in town.
Exactly.
And just making sure that it doesn't harm any business, because it ends up sort of hogging parking and so forth. So what my recommendation is we do it as you guys have recommended and assess it.
Yeah, because I just am thinking I can work with the tent company to install the tent as late in the day as possible, but I'm a little bit at the mercy of the tent company. You know, that's the other part of it, and when they take it down.
Yeah.
So I'll
Excuse me.
stress to them, but it's also.
Yeah.
a little bit
But
at
it
their
might be
mercy.
nice to ask the Masons if you could use that, because that lot often goes empty. People park there anyhow. I don't know if they donate, but maybe, and even the porta potties, so that town has 2 or 3 or 4 more parking spaces.
Well, actually, can I just jump in, Mike, one other thing
Yeah.
that we were thinking of
Oh, yeah.
is that maybe we just use our own pop-up tents after all, because we're in control about when they go up and down, and then they don't have those big rain barrel ballast barrels that
Yeah.
take up less of a
Yeah,
footprint.
okay.
So maybe that's what we'll do.
See what the weather is.
Yeah, well,
Oh.
it just, because we'll have sign, we can hang signs and lights, and it'll just make an attraction, like it'll be the
Nice.
reception.
Welcome.
So, yeah. So
Do you have a question?
I was
Mike?
just going to suggest maybe using pop-up tents. So
Yeah,
that you have
that's what
control.
we'll do.
And then
Okay.
also that there is sort of like a way that you could put the porta potties and those tents on that lot where you're not taking up much parking at all, especially if it's up by the customs house. That spot's it's kind of like a parking spot. I use it as a parking spot all the time, but it's sort of by
Alongside
the
the-
road.
yeah.
And a lot of people don't think they can park there anyway. So, and then I was going to just comment that, like, if you take parking at the Masons, it's like, it's 6 in one, half a dozen of the other. Like, somebody's going to park somewhere.
Right.
So I just don't see,
Okay.
you know, if you're taking a parking spot anywhere, and also the pier's not heavily utilized in the evening in October for parking. It just isn't.
Right.
Okay, any other questions, comments? Okay.
Motion.
Since it was a public hearing, are there any questions or comments from the public about the alcohol license? Okay, hearing none, may I have a motion to approve the use of town property?
I move to approve the use of the marina and town hall parking lots by SPAT on October 12th, 2019, from 3 to 10 p.m., as per the conditions, if any, as listed on the application form for a fee of
110.
$110.
Second?
All in favor? Okay, thank you.
Does that include the,
I think they already voted for that.
Yeah.
Yeah, that's what we were voting on. Good.
okay, thank you.
Good luck.
Thank you so much for your time.
You're welcome. All right, so moving on to Cape Cod, are we at appointments already? We are. Cape Cod Commission, we have 2 applicants, Dick Elkin and Jerry Parent. Anybody want to come up first? You're closest, Dick.
Hello, my name is Dick Elkin.
Okay.
I'm applying for the open position in the Cape Cod Commission as Wellfleet's representative. I said some of this last week, 2 weeks ago, but I'll say it again. I first became interested in this at the One Cape Summit, which I think 3 of the Select Board attended and 3 of the Energy Climate Action Committee attended and some other residents. When I realized the depth of and breadth of the planning that the Commission does. The Commission does 2 things. One is planning and one is regulatory. I'm more interested in the planning aspects of it personally because it affects transportation policy, it affects water runoff, it affects the bays, the 208 plan, and a lot of issues that are current in Wellfleet that are important. I support what the Commission does in terms of its planning, and I have been active in climate change. I'm hoping to guide them into more active consideration of greenhouse gas emissions and climate change and climate assessment than they have in the past, and even what they've published in the current plan. The current plan begins to hint at climate action, but it was added at the last minute, and I think they're moving towards climate action. Wellfleet's had a big effect on the Commission, strangely enough. I'd like to call out Bob Shapiro, who's been working with the Commission and has gotten them to think about what we started, which is the Global Covenant of Mayors and the Climate Action Plan. And I think the Commission may well start taking action on measuring greenhouse gas emissions, which is probably better done at a county level than a town level, because it's very hard to say when somebody drives through Wellfleet but buys the gas in Eastham, who gets the credit for the greenhouse gas emissions. But on a county basis, that's better to do. And if we try to monitor our greenhouse gas emissions on a county level, that would help. The other issue before the Commission that was raised is that Wellfleet has a petition on the Herring River. I have supported the Herring River project. I've made modest donations to the Friends of the Herring River. At Helen's suggestion, I called the state attorney of the day to see if there was a conflict of interest, and we had 3 phone calls, but in the end, all they suggested was I file a form saying there might be an apparent conflict of interest with you, so you're aware that there might be, because I've made donations to the Friends of the Herring River. Nothing else related to any of the jobs. So I hope you will appoint me. I'm looking forward to doing this. I attended one meeting, and the meeting 2 weeks later was canceled, but I went in anyway and talked to the staff and got some grounding on what their current plans are. Thank you.
And how, well, any questions from the board? Comments?
No.
And I know last time we asked you about your views on the Herring River, and I know you just said you supported it. Do you have any particular views on the Herring River project that you wanted to share?
No, I've just been a general supporter. I haven't been following it that closely. I think that salt marsh restoration is important, but I have not been involved in the details of it.
Okay, and, all right, you did a good job on Solarize Wellfleet, soon to be completed. No, not, no, Solarize, so you should tell people that Solarize Wellfleet was getting the different towns together to put solar panels on their houses. And I think you did around 2 of that too, right? Didn't
We
you?
did 2
that ever
rounds.
get going? Yeah,
We did 2
Yeah.
rounds, one in 2014 and one in 2018.
yeah. And then you also,
And as part of that, the vendor agreed to donate up to 4 systems, fairly large systems, 25 kilowatts to 250 kilowatt systems to nonprofits in town. And we are working hard to figure out where to put them, because it's very hard to place them.
yeah,
But we're still working on it.
Yeah. And then you did help get the solar array at the transfer station going.
Yes.
It's going, it's going.
Slowly.
It'll get there. It's not easy going through all the steps you have to go to for things like that. So any, yeah, Mike?
I just had a general question about your background doing systems engineering for Raytheon. I'm just kind of curious what that entailed and if you think it's applicable in the planning.
Well, it entails mostly learning quickly about very technical subjects and working with experts in diverse fields and integrating them into a coherent plan. So that's what my forte was. And I learned a lot of technologies, from radar to weather to air traffic control, the communication systems over the course of the years. And I had to work with experts and define what the requirements were for those systems so that they could work as a coherent whole.
Okay, Helen?
Yeah, one of the things that I'm most impressed with in your resume is that, did you start Nauset Neighbors?
Yes,
Yeah.
but it was my wife's idea.
Okay,
But
but you,
we did found it, and I've been looking at the numbers. We've done, we're approaching 20,000 services to
Wow.
seniors in the 8 years that we've been operating. We have helped nearly 1,000 seniors over the years, and we've had about 500 or 600 volunteers over the years. So it's a large, we're doing about 100 services a week, getting requests for about 100 services a week. It's not a small operation, and systems engineering helped because it's all volunteer. We have a virtual office. We have a lot of software running it.
and Madam Chair, one of the things that I liked the most about the program is that it's regional.
Yeah.
I mean, it's the Outer Cape, and it doesn't just target one town.
Right. It covers 6 towns now: Harwich, Chatham, Brewster, Orleans, Eastham, and Wellfleet.
And I can't remember where I read it. It might have been even in a Cape Cod Commission newsletter or something, but it's an exemplary service that you're still one of the few volunteer services that has been so successful. Kathleen had her hand up.
Dick, thank you for applying for this. I'd also like to mention to the audience that Dick and Esther Elkin have been chosen for the Barbara Gray Legacy Award, a very prestigious award that will be given to them, I believe, early October? Is it in October? For this work, Nauset Neighbors in particular, very successful.
Okay, any other questions? Okay, thank you. And Jerry Parent, do you want to come up, please? Either way,
Yeah.
sit, stand.
I prefer to.
Sitting is more comfortable. So any questions, comments from the board? Not a yes, Justina.
What makes you want to be on the, our rep to the Cape Cod Commission?
I think 20 years on the Wellfleet Planning Board, 28 years on the Wellfleet Planning Board. I think I've learned an awful lot as a planning board member, been involved with traffic, permits, subdivisions, building, that I think will be very helpful if I become a member of the. However, since Rex Peterson, I forget how many years ago, was our full-time town planner, Planning Board has not had a planner, per se. We've had a part-time planner. We've had some individuals that worked in the position to help with the planning board, but not trained as town planners like Rex was. I'm feeling that my joining the commission would be a two-way street. It would be a learning process, learning that experiences that I can bring to the commission, but also a learning experience as presently chairman of the Wellfleet Planning Board, but a member for 28 years, learning what's happening in other towns, what they're going through, what problems they're having, and sort of getting a jump for the future. Wellfleet has been very successful, not with just the planning board, but with the Board of Selectmen, with conservation, and I would say especially with town meeting, voting in planning board recommendations and working with other boards within the town. We have made it a special place. It's special, and the more we make it special, the more expensive it's going to become. We've just seen the tip of the iceberg where prices are going to go in this town. But I think that we need to stay proactive. And I feel that being a member, I knew Roger well as chairman of the appeals board, and as chairman of the planning board, we talked at great length. And seeing what's happening all over the Cape, any advantage that we can get for Wellfleet as to what's going on, tap into their sources, I think will benefit the town of Wellfleet in the future. And I believe I can bring that to Wellfleet. So I'm looking out for the best interest of Wellfleet, looking to advance my knowledge in planning, being involved with granting permits on some of the things we have in Wellfleet. I feel I can be somewhat helpful, knowing I'll be on the bottom of the barrel going in. But I think it's a two-way street, and I think Wellfleet needs to see if we can't get that input from those larger towns. So that's the reason, hopefully.
So some of the goals of the Cape Cod Commission are improving transportation, which we all know needs to be done. And that includes more buses from the bridge all the way up to Provincetown and back, hopefully like electric vehicles. Another thing they're doing is, good luck with this one, but they're putting in sidewalks along Route 28 in Yarmouth and you know, down Dennis and everything. But they're trying to get, I think, is it Smart Streets, Street Smarts? What's their program? I can't remember the name. It's got a very catchy name. And they do want, you know, more sidewalks, more people being safe on the streets, more bicycles, you know, again, to get the auto congestion off the streets. And I'm just throwing this out there. I'm just thinking of it as we go along, because I see Steve in the back. Do you have any opinion or any thoughts on the Route 6 bike trail, bike lanes? And I'll tell you, you don't know hardly anything about it because they're coming up with a new plan and everything. But do you think it's a good idea to safely make room for bikes, walkers, anywhere? I mean, this is a huge thing. I'm sorry to throw this at you.
That's okay. I was involved from the planning board point of view with the Route 6 intersection and Rex with the Cape Cod Commission. I was at a couple of the hearings when they discussed the fact of backing that intersection improvement. At that moment, sitting at the meetings, the other members mentioned that they really should do more for the Lower Cape than they have in the past. All the money was going, and time and energy was going to Harwich, Dennis, Hyannis, and whatnot. And you can see by driving off of Route 6 through Hyannis and those other major towns, the improvements to sidewalks, the improvements to streets that are going in and being coordinated with DOT and Cape Cod Commission. DOT seems to in my initial view, listen more intently to Cape Cod Commission than they do to Wellfleet or Eastham as single individual towns. I feel that Wellfleet could get more out of the Cape Cod Commission. I think that sidewalks and planning are a necessity. It takes money. We have to spend money. Wellfleet did a lot of work on Commercial Street, but we didn't move telephone poles like Eastham is moving, and we still have a major problem with handicap. We still have a major problem with street widths. We still have a major problem with sidewalks. The DOT is going to bring in a new intersection at Route 6, and they are planning in some manner, shape, or form to hook up what the rail trail has done from the bridge all the way to P-Town. I think serious work needs to be done with the commission's backing, with DOT, with the bike people in Wellfleet. Steve Oliver was on the planning board. I was lucky to serve with Steve on the planning board, and listen to all of the problems. But the bike trail will in fact bring problems to Wellfleet that need to be solved. Just like, and with all due respect to Provincetown, the successful whaling trips and everything else coming out of Provincetown has created problems to Wellfleet with traffic.
Yeah.
Let's face it, 85% of the traffic on Route 6 streams by Main Street at Route 6 and goes straight to Provincetown. Very little of it comes into Wellfleet. We don't benefit an awful lot from that tourist traffic. It goes right by us. So if the bike trail goes in, it would make some substantial difference if we can work with both Cape Cod Commission, the rail trail, and DOT to bring some of that bike traffic into Wellfleet safely. It may mean changing some of our historic ways of getting in and out of Wellfleet, but I think it's something that needs to be looked at in overall planning. I think we need to address those things that are going to happen on Route 6 and be proactive with it. So I look to that. I think the bike trail is, when the state has literally put in as much money as they have on the rail trail, I think it will be finished up to Provincetown. It's a matter of how it's finished and how safely it's finished, and I believe I could give some pretty good input and listen to those individuals that could bring it, to bring in additional information to it.
Kathleen?
I don't know whether I answered your question or not.
Yes, you did, yeah.
I'm not going to get into the bike trail
Details, yeah.
debacle, but I will say that I am aware that the Cape Cod Commission did approach the planning board, I don't know if it was 2 years ago or several years ago, about doing a DCPC here in Wellfleet. They had conducted one in Eastham after Dollar General was threatening to go into Eastham. Eastham has got a plan from the Cape Cod Commission, their planning board, that's going to redevelop, Route 6 going through Eastham, so you're not just passing through. The Cape Cod Commission's plan is giving Eastham a chance to create a village-like, scenario out on the highway. And yet, you turned it down here in Wellfleet. Why was that? When they approached us, we could have.
Well, the planning board was. The planning board was approached at the time, I believe, if memory serves me, that Eastham was going to do the DCPC. Wellfleet looked at it, the planning board looked at it and felt at that particular moment in time the downtown district and Route 6 was fairly protected. And I do not mean to state disparagingly anything with Eastham. The problem arose, I believe, in Eastham that rose its head, ugly head, was when they decided to go to town water. They did not do any zoning restrictions first. And consequently, that opened up Route 6 and created them some very serious problems. Eastham also never had a Wellfleet Center. They did have that land off of Brackett Road, which they were looking to do a center with. But Eastham had many more serious problems than Wellfleet has ever had, because Wellfleet has been extremely successful in keeping what it seemed was the environment for those that lived in Wellfleet to keep Route 6 minimal construction on commercial aspect. We have retained what basically was commercial property on 6 back to the 66 zoning. Eastham, on the other hand, has created tremendous curb cuts, tremendous commercial property up and down the highway, and has come back to basically haunt them in some very serious traffic problems, very serious accidents, and I think they needed that kind of help, and it reached the plateau of a DCPC made sense for them at that moment in time.
And going forward for us, I see 4 marijuana dispensaries out on the highway and a much larger Cumberland Farms coming in with a gas station. So I differ opinion on you with that. I think we could have benefited from having that done for us. It might have not looked that way back then, whatever that was 3 years ago, but certainly I see it something that we could have looked at today. It's just my opinion.
Certainly.
Helen?
Yes, Jerry, and thanks to both of you for applying to this. At the last meeting, when your application had come in late, I said something which I want to say now, which is after a question is answered. What is your relationship with the planning board going to be if you get this appointment?
I truly hope that nothing's going to change.
Okay, that's the answer. What I said last time, and that's what I hoped, because you're a strong member of that board and you have years of experience here with it. And
28.
Yes, 28. And none of us is irreplaceable, but you're pretty close to that on the planning board. Do I agree with all your decisions? No. What I do not want is any loss of checks and balances. And therefore, with gratitude for your considering this extra job, which is a very big job, right? I am not going to vote for you for that reason, mainly for that reason. And the other reason is that I feel that the key issue for planning, the monster, the elephant in the room, the seismic planning issue, is climate change. And Mr. Elkin has been, his committee has just changed the name to Energy and Climate Change. And I think that that is going to change everything about the way the Cape Cod Commission and all the rest of us deal with that. So this is not personal. I think you're great. I love you for applying, but I'm saying it now because I really feel that I want the planning board to be making decisions completely separately and cleanly away from the Cape Cod Commission. I want them to be 2 independent bodies, and our one representative of the Cape Cod Commission should not also be on the planning board, in my opinion, no matter how useful you might be because of that.
Okay. Last questioner, what are your thoughts or feelings about the Herring River project?
I would say that I am not anywhere near as informed as I am with general planning in the town of Wellfleet. I think the idea and the concept are very good. I am generally concerned with the potential problems and risks and liability suits that can hit the town of Wellfleet if it's not handled correctly. People's property, people's septic, people's wells. So in my opinion, at this point, my decision is still out there as to, there's a lot of questions to be answered. They're still diving into ownership of roads. I just got off the phone a week and a half, 2 weeks ago over High Toss Bridge Road as to ownership because I did a subdivision bordering it. They have no clue on who owns it, where it's coming from. They're still working on that. But there are changes under that Herring River project that are massive to the town of Wellfleet. And I don't know if an awful lot of us have a total grasp of what that change is going to look like or happen. But I am very deeply concerned that no insurance company will back us and that this town is potentially facing a tremendous lawsuit. And you talked about taxes tonight. There's a lot of people that can't afford that. So I'm certainly not against it. I'm certainly not sitting here for it. But I keep an open mind about it and see what's happening. And again, try and learn as much as I can from it.
Okay, good, thank you. Any other questions?
Justine.
Comment? Oh, Justina, okay.
Well, I guess since Helen asked Jerry about his role on the planning board, Dick, would you be still planning to head up you're the chair of the Energy and Climate Change Committee? Climate Action. I'm torn here. I think Jerry has a lot of nuts and bolts real world experience, and I think that the Cape Cod Commission, the things he said about getting resources, Wellfleet's fair share of resources, of networking, of hearing what other towns are doing, of basically being our rep and being in there and representing the best interests of Wellfleet really resonates for me. And I think that Mr. Elkin is already heavily involved in energy and climate change and heads up a committee. So I think it's a tough choice. I think Jerry has a lot to offer, and it would benefit Wellfleet to have a good, strong advocate for our town and the resources, our town getting its fair share of resources.
Janet?
Yes, are you going to make a motion or anything?
I'm going to say something briefly in response.
Okay.
So I appreciate Jerry's concern about representing Wellfleet well, but most of the work of the commission members is not about Wellfleet and not about Wellfleet to be thought about before the other communities that the members have to act on.
It's regional.
He's our rep. He would be our rep. He would represent us.
Yes, but Wellfleet's interests are a very small part of that job. I just wanted to put that out there. It's a
Right,
fact.
but I sit on a committee up there and represent Wellfleet, and it's regional committee, the Water Protection Collaborative, but I'm representing our town. That's all I meant.
That's
You would represent our town.
That's a different position.
Okay.
Can I add something?
Yep.
Just quick. Wellfleet Planning Board for years has been trying to get DOT to seriously look at our our 3 traffic lights and look at traffic patterns to see if we can change them. And Wellfleet itself and the Wellfleet Planning Board, with just DOT, we have gotten nowhere. And I have seen other towns in driving up and down the Cape with the money that's being spent and with the cooperation and the I'm not going to say clout, but it may be clout, but it also may be affirmative action between the Cape Cod Commission and DOT. And I certainly believe that Wellfleet, with a representative that can look at traffic patterns and look at planning and look at Route 6, I hope to one of the things is to bring to the rest of the board, I know it's about the entire Cape, but also look at Wellfleet, maybe with their clout, to reanalyze DOT, to start looking at some of our problems, as well as Dennis's, Harwich's, and Yarmouth's.
Okay, ready for a
I'd
motion?
just like to make just a suggestion.
Okay.
I feel like there's some advantage to speaking second, and I've noticed this also in select board meetings where interviews were conducted for positions where people were not asked the same questions and had a chance to respond. So I feel like maybe it would be good, not in this board, not recently, just the way things go. I think it's important that the other person get a chance to respond to some of the same questions.
Rebuttal.
Not really
Yeah.
necessarily, but
Yeah, I know.
there's
I
a
hear what
certain
you're
thing
saying,
when you speak first, you're asked certain questions. Somebody else is asked different questions,
Yeah.
and
No, I know
that
what
you
mean.
don't have the same response, different responses to the same questions, or the same response to the same questions. So
Does the
this is
board want to do that, or does the
Yes.
board want to
Madam
make
Chair,
a
through you to Mr. DeVasto, are you asking for
motion?
a policy
no,
No.
with regard to how we interview, or,
maybe in the future, but not right now.
okay.
Well,
Okay, this is yeah.
so if there was anything that came up that hasn't already been said by Mr. Elkin, that has come up here, I would like to hear from him, and I take Mike's
He
point.
wants to-
You're absolutely right, it's a phenomenon. It happens.
It's just,
Yeah.
it's natural.
Okay. Okay, yeah, you can sit. Mr. Oliver?
Thank you, Madam Chair. My name is Steve Oliver. Just like to say that I had the pleasure of serving for 2 years with Jerry Parent on the planning board, and I learned that he really, truly has the best interest of Wellfleet at heart. And I think very few people in this town know Wellfleet as well as he does. Thank you very much.
Thank you. So does anyone want to ask Mr. Elkin another question?
No,
Or
just to
just make
hear
a
if,
motion? Do you have any extra comment? Yeah. I think, yeah.
I don't think so.
Okay.
There's nothing this is not a debate, and I'm not rebuttal. My focus is definitely more Cape-wide with Wellfleet's concerns in mind.
Yeah. Okay, so may I have a motion? Anybody want to make?
I
okay.
move, with gratitude to both, I move that we appoint Richard Elkin to, oh wait, I have to ask a question first. This is an important question. So did we determine if this is to fill out Roger Putnam's 3-year term? Okay, so it's just going to be for 2 years, right? So I move to appoint Richard Elkin as the Wellfleet representative to the Cape Cod Commission to fill a term ending in 2021.
Is there a second?
I second.
All in favor? Opposed? Okay, so Dick, you get it. I
And-
have to say, this is, two great applicants.
Yeah.
And Jerry, we look forward to hearing from you many times more, okay, on something. So, good. Yes.
I have a strange request of the board.
Name?
My name is Ben Niggle. I'm from Eastham. I actually came down from college this morning after a full day of classes and have to wake up at 6 to go back. So I'm item 4C. Is there any way that the board would be willing to move forward on 4C so I can go
You're
to bed?
coming up quickly.
4C?
Yeah, use of town property,
Yes.
paddleboard.
Yeah.
I do not have a problem with that. Does the board have a problem taking that out of order of the agenda? Okay.
Thank you.
So, yep, come on up. come on up to this mic and,
No.
whatever, either way. Okay, so you guys have all read. Anybody have this is for the audience, this is use of town property for paddleboard. So is Suzanne still here?
Yeah.
There you are again. You keep hiding every week. So I had a couple questions. So you say, your application, I'm trying to look it up quickly. You say ponds. We usually want something a little more explicit on our applications. Do you plan on using every pond? Suzanne says no to Gull Pond, I think it is.
Yep.
Yeah.
Yes.
In our current regulations, for-profit activities are not permitted at Gull Pond. That's
Yes.
why I said not at Gull Pond.
So, and you've told that to Mr. Niggle? Or have
We
you
had
guys?
one phone conversation,
Okay.
during which I suggested he submit this application. He said he was familiar with our beach rules and regulations, so I don't remember specifically telling him that.
Okay. So that's what, it would be without Gull Pond.
I'd like to add to that.
Okay,
Madam Chair, excuse me. In addition to Gull Pond, I'd like to add Higgins and Williams
yeah.
as to not be used by stand-up paddleboarding.
I think we're only, and the way I look at it, it's permission to use a town landing
Yeah, that's
to
right.
access the pond. So it would only be the ponds that Wellfleet has a town landing on.
Okay. And I know in your application, you talk about quick drop-off. You're just going to be dropping off the paddleboard and by delivery only. You're not teaching or anything, you're just delivering them. And it says a quick stop. It does not say, however, a quick pickup. So how are you going to handle the pickups? Because I know that, again, the use of the ponds, leaving paddle boards around, not that that's well, it's not your problem, it's your business, but it's also the people who rent them who just forget to call you, don't have cell phone service, whatever. How are you going to pick them up on time?
So it's not just paddleboards, it's paddleboards and kayaks.
Okay,
And
all right.
So basically, how it works, at no point are the paddleboards or kayaks left unattended at any pond, bayside beach, waterway in the town of Wellfleet. I serve Wellfleet through Brewster mainly. And basically, a client will call, they'll want to rent a paddleboard or a kayak. They'll sign all of our waivers, which holds the town and the company completely free of liability. They sign that all over. There's a rental agreement. We go over what time, if they're doing a half-day rental or a full-day rental. It's a time slot. I'll meet them at the pond. We drop them off. It probably takes, and this isn't an exaggeration, a minute, 2 minutes. We drop them off, say, okay, I'll see you in 4 hours or 8 hours, and then we go back and pick them up. So since operating for this summer, not once has a kayak or paddleboard been left on town property or have caused any kind of damage to the property.
And then you just said ponds and, I don't know what you just said, waterways or things.
Yeah.
So here again on your, we need to be explicit on these applications. So you say ponds primarily. Are you looking at other places or is it ponds primarily?
So what's nice about our delivery service is we really deliver to any body of water that's safe for the kayak or paddleboard. I will be honest, a lot of times it isn't at town property. A lot of times it'll be like someone's summer home or they'll be coming here to vacation and they
yeah.
won't have it, so I'll just go to their house. But typically it's ponds and bayside beaches.
That have
Okay, so-
town landings.
And town, okay,
And it's primarily Eastham. I've had very few in Wellfleet.
okay. And you're okay with that, Suzanne? And
I am. The main, I'm sorry, I'm using my playground voice. The reason I asked Ben to do this application so that we would have a relationship with him that included his being required to provide us with liability insurance, naming the town is also insured. His method of dropping off and picking up has been unnoticeable until he tried to do it at Gull Pond and found out about the regulation, which is what started this. So I just want to regularize the relationship, allow him to do everything but Gull Pond, and have the town also insured.
Okay, and you know about the insurance request?
Correct. I have a $2 million policy for general liability as well as protections on the equipment, our vehicle, the trailer, so we're well insured.
And naming Wellfleet as part of the insured?
Correct.
One of
I
the
can
insured?
provide that with you if you'd like.
Yeah,
It,
you would, yeah.
not only names myself, the company, all of our agents, volunteers, the town, the county, the state. It's very inclusive, and there should be no liability for the town.
Helen, did you have your hand up?
Yeah,
Justina
okay,
did?
so I'm going to pick up on where Janet left off with the pickups and drop-offs. So, you rent to different people for different 4-hour cycles or 2-hour cycles?
Yeah, so we do half days and days.
Okay, yeah, so not all those people are going to want to be done at the same time. I rent for half a day, X number of hours, and I've driven my car and parked at whatever the town landing is. And, I go out, my arms get tired, and I come in, and I guess I give a call. And that means somebody with this trailer is lurking somewhere in Wellfleet, waiting for the call. But these calls for a pickup are not all going to come in at the same time. And what's going to happen hold on, just let me finish my, terrible scenario. What's going to happen is people say, we're done, we want to go, have something to eat, and they haven't shown up yet, I'm just going to leave it here. Why would that not happen?
Can I answer that?
I would rather have Ben answer it, because I'm not as familiar with the business as he is.
Okay.
So respectfully, I just turned 18 in August, and that's when I was able to start the business. But I worked for a business similar to this before. And everything I've experienced so far, not one person has cut the rental early or left the boats there. Typically, if someone doesn't want the full half day, or if they want like a day and a half, if they want like in between a half day and a full day, that's all negotiated before I even drop them off. So I know, and how I schedule my day is, say I have a rental for pickup at noon in Wellfleet, then I'm not going to book a delivery till 12:30 or 1 in Eastham. So I understand your concern, but from everything, all the rentals I've done hasn't happened yet, and it will not happen.
And I have a second issue. So there would be no drop-offs at any of the places that you could drop off at either Higgins or Williams.
I believe the restriction is Gull Pond.
Yes, but those 3 ponds are linked.
Mm-hmm.
And I would like to put language in here that says you also cannot use those 2 ponds. You cannot access them. Can we even do that? I think we can.
I don't
Because-
know what the
because,
access is
excuse
like
me,
there.
Higgins, you see, there's an access to go, there's the sluice, which, is the sluice a public landing?
Yeah.
I'm looking through you to the beach
It's not a
administrator.
public
Yes.
landing, is it?
The public landing at Higgins Pond, next to the sluice, is a town landing. However, there is no allowed permitted vehicular access.
Yeah, tell
Only
that to the,
pedestrian access.
tell that to the people who live there, unfortunately. So I would like to have those 3 ponds off the table if we approve this.
Who had their hand up first?
I think, I do.
Okay.
I think we can only restrict town landings.
Yeah,
They're
Yeah.
private property other than that, or National Seashore.
yeah,
So there's only one town landing at Higgins, and it's not even a landing.
yeah, but the town landing at Higgins accesses both Gull and
Right.
Higgins, and if you get onto Higgins, you can go to Williams. And I think that would be not a good idea for a lot of reasons, mainly having to do with the way in which people use the sluice and overuse the sluice. And things got better when we stopped having rental of kayaks and other things at Gull Pond at the sluice, which was beginning to smell like a latrine, which is, you know, so I would like
you
them.
want to restrict the sluice,
Yeah.
town landing. What do you want to do, Mike?
I would not like to, it's already restricted. You can't even get down there, and this is rentals, not lessons. There's already tons of personal kayaks on Gull Pond. I mean, if the random chance that somebody asks for a kayak to be delivered down at Higgins Landing,
It's not that random, it does
you
happen,
could still
Mike.
drag your own down there. It's just a rental. That's all I'm saying. Somebody could go rent it at Jack's Boat Rental and drag it down themselves.
No.
I mean,
No.
we're not,
Okay.
what are we actually restricting here? Like, it just doesn't make any sense to me to be restricting a
what you're saying.
rental.
What do you want to say, Kathleen?
Yeah, this is why I bring this up. I've been a property manager on Higgins Pond for 28 years, and so I've seen the stand-up paddle boards and the kayaks that have been dropped off by Jack's or somebody else, Provincetown. How they get in there and out of there, I don't know. But these 3 ponds are very fragile, and we had a cyanobacteria outbreak in one of these ponds, in Gull Pond. So Gull Pond has a town landing. There is a town landing at Higgins Pond. As Michael says, it's not that accessible, but trust me, people do find a way to get in there. So I would like to impart on you that the Select Board is asking Gull, Higgins, and Williams Pond not be used for your business. And I wish you the best with this, Ben. I know your mom, and I know that you're going to do a really good job with this business.
Thank you.
So, Mr. O'Connell, I just want to ask Ms. Grout something first. Ms. Grout, so
Sprout was my mother.
Yeah, I know. I just changed it in the middle. Do you think we should include on everybody's request for use, include Higgins Pond? I mean, the sluice, town landing.
I am of the opinion that we can only, as a town, not I, but you, are only entitled to regulate activity on town property, which would be the landing at Higgins Pond and the landing at Gull Pond. Gull Pond is already restricted, so in this particular, I don't know what authority the town has, if any, over ponds that are smaller than 10 acres. I believe they're under state or federal authority, not under town authority.
So, what are you saying?
I'm saying that
Okay.
Higgins and Williams are little.
We should.
And I don't think
yeah.
we, as a town, have authority over their use or activities on them.
But we do have authority over
Over
the
our landing.
town landing
Yes.
at the sluice.
Correct.
So would you like to include that in
I think it's fine.
all applications? How's that?
All applications for,
Paddle boarding, kayaking, boating rentals, they don't do that anymore.
we don't do anything for profit from Gull. The odds of having somebody for profit portaging the kayaks and supboards into Higgins Landing are slim to none.
Well, so do you just, so I guess I just want to simply ask you, yes, restrict the sluice, no, restrict the sluice.
I would say
Whether it's
if
minimal
you
or
are
whatever.
comfortable restricting the sluice, I think that's fine to
Okay,
add that
let's
language.
do that, right?
I don't think it will actually change the activity.
Yeah, Madam Chair?
Okay.
So I need
wait.
to add a fact here. I go to the Guapaka meetings every summer. That is the organization
Yeah,
of
we
people
know, we
around
know.
those
Move on.
ponds. Yes,
Yeah.
but the public doesn't
They
know.
know it.
So the point is, I hear in graphic detail, graphic, about what extended use, and there's a lot of use by paddleboarders and kayakers, and sure, some of them are private property owners, they own homes there, but what it does to that chain of ponds, which, by the way, is part of the herring fishery. And I also hear a lot about impacts to the sluice that would make your hair stand on end. And suddenly, when I heard what Mike had to say, I realized I'm the only person on the board who went through a whole cycle of really bad problems on this, which is one of the things that led to us not having the kayak and boat rentals on Gull Pond Landing. There's a whole history of this, which you're not aware of. So I'm not just,
So I'm
Yeah.
I'm asking Suzanne, and she says she agrees that the selectmen can restrict dropping off equipment at the sluice. So I want to know if how many other people are in favor of restricting the equipment. It does have to do with you, but it's bringing up other people who do it too. So do we want to feel this is separate from your application, except for restricting it? Do we want to do that? Put-
I want
put it
to add,
into-
I want to add in the language that we were given by Suzanne, not Gull Pond,
Nor Higgins.
Nor Higgins.
But I
Okay,
think we
that's
have to
all?
call it the Sluice Way. What's the formal name?
The
Sluice
official
Way Landing?
name of that town landing is the town landing at Higgins Pond.
Yeah.
Town Landing at Higgins, okay, not the sluice, okay. So, and let's put that in future,
I think consistency is good.
yeah. The Town Landing at Higgins Pond, okay. So let's, I kind of know what you might say, but I want to get his application finished, so he can go back to Boston. You going back to Boston tonight?
Tomorrow morning,
Tomorrow, okay, then you have plenty of time.
except I'm leaving at 6 a.m.
Justina?
I'm a little confused. Number one, I thought that the application was for town landings only, correct? So if we eliminate Gull, that leaves us with what, Long?
And great.
Great.
Long and Great. And then there's some ambiguous language in here about, that somebody else referenced, primarily ponds.
Right, I checked, he says he can do it at the bay and the harbor with private,
So are primarily ponds limited to town landings, or is it anywhere? I'm just trying to understand what
if
we're
you're an
approving.
individual homeowner on a pond or on the bay or on the harbor,
But I mean,
you may have,
can you just pull
something.
up to, are we limiting him to, this is a question for Suzanne, are you envisioning he's limited to town landings?
No, if his customers want him to deliver supboards or kayaks to a landing, they don't have any private property for him to deliver it to, it would be one of the two town landings that you're permitting tonight.
Except for the customer's private property.
Right, we don't have any
Right. No, I wasn't.
need to regulate activities on private property.
Right. I'm sorry I wasn't clear. In addition to the customers getting it at private property, the limit would be to Wellfleet town landings primarily.
That's my
ponds.
understanding, yes.
Is that correct?
Yeah, like I
Okay.
said, it's a small fraction that I
Sure.
go to public property anyway.
Okay, and then I had a couple more questions. So you did this last summer
Yeah, for like 2 weeks.
for yourself as a 17-year-old?
I'm 18, but yes,
Good for you.
thank you.
And how many boards and kayaks do you think that you're going to have?
So currently I have 6 paddleboard, 6 or 7 paddleboards, 3-4 single kayaks, as well as a two tandem kayaks. And I envision myself replacing some of the older boards and getting some new kayaks as well.
And you have a vehicle?
I do, and a trailer. So sounds like Higgins Pond I wouldn't even be able to get to if I wanted to.
And are you going to do it just yourself, or are you doing it with a friend?
It's just me.
Okay, well, good for you, an entrepreneur.
Thank you. College is expensive.
Madam Chair, I've rewritten the motion.
I just forgot your name.
Tim Sayre?
Tim, yeah, good.
Tim Sayre, 111 Wiles Lane. I will say that I live on Gray Pond. I don't have a problem with the business that he wants to do. What I'd like the board to do is reinforce to him that when you deliver to Gray Pond, it's a long ways down the banks there to the town landing from that parking lot. People take their kayaks and throw them over in the woods and slide them down the banking. I see it happen all the time. I don't like seeing that happen. You put up a chain link fence, it still happens. I just want that reinforced. The other problem is that at Long Pond, there's someone currently dropping off kayaks and canoes and paddle boards there. They park right in the road. You come around that corner, it's pretty much a blind corner till you get just before Long Pond heading towards the ocean, okay? And they should not be allowed to do that. My third point is that there's been a trailer left with paddle boards and stuff on it in the parking lot at Long Pond overnight. I've seen it there at 9 and 10 o'clock at night. And I don't know if the board
Okay.
wants to allow that or not either.
No,
So I
no,
just
that's
want
not
you to
allowed.
be aware of the three things. I hope he becomes the entrepreneur of the Cape with paddle boards and everything, but just, we need to protect the environment at Gray Pond. I don't have a problem with people using Gray Pond with kayaks and stand-ups. Let's just not slide down the banking. And Long Pond, it's dangerous parking in that road right there. And they do it every
yeah.
day during the season. I saw it almost every day.
What are we
Thank
gonna,
you.
I can't believe people break the law. Anyhow, you're gonna make a motion?
Yeah, and I just,
Make a motion, okay?
I just want to
Okay.
check, you also want to be able to do this occasionally at the bay and the harbor? Town
Yes.
landings?
Yes, you said
Okay,
that.
I've got the motion.
I have a second thing to do. I actually want to hold off on the application fee until we go over all of our fees, which will be in a month or two.
Okay.
And not the application fee, but the fee. We may change them, we may not. So, is that okay? And we'll let you know. You don't have to come back. We'll just email you saying same amount, or it went up or down. Okay.
So I
It
move
won't be
to
a lot.
approve the use of the town landings at ponds, the harbor, and the bay, with the exception of town landings at Gull and Higgins ponds, from May through August 2020, per the conditions, if any, as listed on the application form, for a fee to be determined.
Is there a second?
Second.
All in favor? Thank you, thank you.
Thank you.
Drive safely.
I will.
Like with your homework.
Thank you.
And Courtney, will you make a note on our applications to include town landings on these things, to change the wording that you feel is appropriate? Thanks. Okay.
I
right.
didn't, Madam Chair, I didn't put the name of the applicant in the motion, so can we
Okay,
put that in there?
she can do that.
Thank you, yeah.
Okay, let's move right on to the Local Comprehensive Planning Committee. I believe we can do this as a joint group motion. Anybody have any discussion?
Yeah, sorry. So there are 8 people we're appointing tonight, and that means we're going to have to find one more at some point.
The Housing Authority is meeting tomorrow, I believe, so they will provide us with an appointee for the next meeting.
Good, thank you.
All right. So may I have a motion? I think everybody is aware of who's on this board and has talked to them and everything like that.
Yeah, I move to appoint Suzanne Grout Thomas, Jennifer Wortkin, Jay Norton, Mac Hay, Janet Lesniak, Bonnie Shepherd, Jay Horowitz, Janice Plowey, to the Local Comprehensive Planning Committee for a 2-year term.
Is there a second?
Second.
All in favor? Great, thank you. Thank you guys for waiting.
Meeting on Thursday,
Meeting on Thursday. Okay.
but go get sworn in tomorrow.
Yeah.
9 o'clock. Here.
If you're not sworn, you can't vote.
But you can go to the meeting.
Yeah.
All right. Great. Thank you guys for doing all this, too. It's fun, isn't it? It is. You having a good time here, Jay?
Yeah, absolutely.
Good.
It's been really great. Thanks for
Good.
Yeah.
I'm just glad I didn't have to speak tonight.
You are now.
We can pull you back.
Okay.
Good
You
night.
too. And then the next application is for Jed Foley to the Board of Health. Any questions, comments? Yes.
I am so grateful that somebody with Mr. Foley's qualifications, which I've been aware of for some time, is willing to be on this board. It really needs a 5th member. And I hope that you will help them to maintain quorums.
Good. Any other questions, comments? Want to know anything? Okay, can I have a motion?
I
May I
move to
have a
appoint
motion?
Jed Foley to the Board of Health for a term to expire on June 30th, 2022.
There a second? All in favor? Thank you. Thank you for
Thank you.
waiting. Thank
Jed?
you for doing a job.
Jed, there's a Board of Health meeting tomorrow, and so if you get sworn in before that, you can vote and attend and vote.
What time is the meeting? Isn't it like at 8 o'clock in the morning? No. They're not that early? Okay.
Yeah.
Oh, that's right, they're later.
And one more
Good.
thing, you can't miss more than 4 meetings in a row without getting a waiver from us. It's a policy, a select board policy. Right.
All right.
See you, Jill.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you. Okay. Almost last, but not almost least, is Wellfleet Conservation Trust with a beach cleanup use of town property for October 14th, 2019 at Mayo Beach.
This is part of this coast sweep, which is done by the state of Massachusetts and all rolls up into the International, what's it called, Ocean Conservancy, to clean plastic is the primary target. And we record all the information.
Documented.
Yep, document it and send it into Boston, and Boston sends it into Washington, and I don't know where Washington sends it, but it has been helpful. And it's just a group of volunteers. It's arranged by the trust, along with co-sponsors, including the Recycling Committee and the Conservation Commission and the Friends of Herring River and the Open Space Committee. And we generally get a bunch of people together. And this is on the Monday of the three-day weekend there. So that's the plan, and we apparently, in the past, we've not needed your permission, but we know how to ask. So we're here to ask for your permission to use the parking lot at Mayo Beach to do our cleanup.
Thank you. And I'm sure you're accepting all volunteers, and they should
Yes.
just meet at Mayo Beach parking
Yep,
lot?
and we will have, we'll have posters around town. That's pretty obvious, it says Coast Sweep. I don't know if I'm heading in the right direction for a camera, but they'll be around town, and they're on the Wellfleet Conservation Trust website. So please do just show up. Don't need reservations. If the weather is really wretched, we're going to have to cancel.
True,
But
yeah.
otherwise, we'll go for it.
Great. Kathleen?
Denny, I'd like to put a time in the motion. So I know it's on Monday, October the 14th.
Yep.
Is it between 12 and 3, or?
Nope, it starts at 9, so we'll be there at 8:30 or something of that nature. And it should take 2 to 3 hours at max, so we'll be out of there by noon.
Okay, so I'm going to put that in the motion.
Fine, thank you.
Great. Any other questions, comments? Do you want to make the motion, Kathleen?
I move to approve the use of Mayo Beach by the Wellfleet Conservation Trust on October the 14th, 2019, from the time of 8:30 a.m. to 12 a.m.
Noon.
Noon. Is there an application fee for this?
I don't think so.
There is an application fee that we had to pay. And
Yep, he's asking.
Under
to have
protest.
Yeah, he's asking to have the other fee waived, so.
Yeah, I'd like to waive the fee.
Yeah, that's fine.
Thank you.
Okay.
Is there a second?
Second.
All in favor? Thank you.
Thank you.
Okay, so approval of Assistant Town Administrator's contract.
So the
Oh,
contract
yeah,
you have
discussion.
before you is the same one we used before for the Assistant Town Administrator, so I would just request your approval on this.
So, yeah. I have a question. So that was going to be my first question. But is there some way to guarantee, unless there's an emergency, obviously, that one of the two administrators will be available in town hall?
That is our intent.
Yeah, because that is sometimes has been an issue. And it's just really important. You know, I mean, people are available electronically, but somebody has to be on premises.
That's our
in
intent at all times, we'll always have somebody who is covering.
But that's not in the contract,
No, we
right?
wouldn't put that in a contract.
Okay, I wouldn't think so, yeah, but,
Mike, do you have a question, comment?
I retract it.
Okay. So I'd just like to say for the record that Heather Doyle, who's been getting involved in town with I always forget the name of it, the project at the pier and other things, Expedition Blue, thank you. And she emailed me that Bert Jackson emailed her. And he's not only a musician, but he's involved in many county committees and things. He emailed her saying, "Lucky Wellfleet," when she said you were appointed assistant town administrator. So, thank you. I hope you have fun. Any other, okay, motion, please?
I move to approve the contract for the assistant town administrator and authorize the town administrator to sign the contract.
There's a second?
Second.
All in favor? Thank you.
Thank you,
And
thank you.
Leah, we now have the Lower Cape Housing Institute. I think most of us are aware of it.
Andrea, do you want to use the
Oh, I said Leah.
They all have copies of your slides.
Wait,
Yeah,
yeah.
yeah,
Yeah.
yeah.
Yes.
Yes, you may.
I think this might be my 5th presentation on this.
Well, yeah,
I
twice
feel
a
like
year.
of all the groups, you all know the CDP, so I don't need to go into detail about everything. And I think, correct me if I'm wrong, but you all have an understanding of the context, the larger program that the Housing Institute is a part of. So I won't get into all of that. You should have all received copies of our flyer and brochure.
Yeah.
There were a couple changes, of course, that happened after printing, so I wanted to distribute the final version.
Thank you.
So what I really wanted to talk about is what's new this year and why you would come again. So again, we're doing a 6-week series of free trainings for elected and appointed municipal officials and town staff. While it is free for you all to participate, of course, the town did support the Housing Institute through CPC funds 2 years in a row. So the town would like you to participate as well. So a couple things are different this year. We redesigned the curriculum with a few things in mind. The first thing is that we're in a moment right now where all of the 8 Lower Cape towns are actively engaged in affordable housing development. You know all about that, of course. So we wanted to make sure that the Institute was relevant to the towns given that. So instead of grouping things by topic, as we've done in the past, we more closely followed the development timeline chronologically. So that's one change. And just making sure that we're aware of where each town is in the process and making sure that there is content matching the needs of each town in different sessions. The other thing that we're trying to do this year that we haven't done before is deal with the historical tension between open space and housing. And we're doing that in a couple of ways. One way is our zoning session this year is focused on open space residential development. We're also going to be talking about zoning for compact housing and just kind of ABCs of zoning in that session as well, but that's something we haven't talked about before. And the other thing that we're doing is inviting open space and conservation committees to attend the Institute and to be part of the housing conversation. And by inviting them to the Institute, that means they're also invited to the other aspects of the program that we offer besides the 6 weeks, which are the quarterly sub-regional peer group meetings that we've been doing for a year and a half now, as well as our quarterly advanced trainings where we do a deep dive into different housing topics. So I think it's really interesting to bring those groups in to have more nuanced conversations, particularly since some towns are looking at parcels of land where they're trying to do more than housing. The other thing we're trying to do is just offer other tools and creative solutions for strengthening the year-round community. So housing development is one way to deal with the housing crisis, but there's a lot of other things that you can be doing to support year-rounders as well, like a residential tax exemption, right? The other thing we're always trying to do, especially since several affordable housing trusts have switched to the municipal affordable housing trust model, is continuing to offer guidance on how we can clarify and make sure that roles are complementary between housing trusts and affordable housing committees or local housing partnerships. I don't know if that's a challenge here, but it's definitely a challenge in lots of the other towns where it's kind of hard to know who's doing what and not stepping on each other's toes and making sure that there's a more coordinated effort. So we are trying to deal with that. And then, of course, we want to make sure that it's relevant and interesting to people who are returning and not just people who have never been to the Institute before. The sessions are all going to contain a key action. We want to make sure that we're not just talking about housing and we're doing things. Obviously, Wellfleet is already doing several things, and I think the region as a whole is doing a lot. But I do hear that people are kind of tired of talking about the crisis, and talking about it doesn't change things. So we're going to be really action-oriented, and each session is going to have one high-impact task or action that we think towns can take on if they, say, just do one thing from that session. In the past, we've kept messaging as a topic kind of standing alone. This year, we're going to scatter it throughout. So messaging, I think, is a really key piece of housing. So what is messaging? So the idea there is that when we're talking about the housing crisis, we're talking about how things are really dire and there's a problem and people need to pay attention, or apocalypse. But that's not a very motivating line of conversation, right? People aren't motivated by all of the things that are going wrong. They're motivated by hearing about what can go right. So messaging is about not just talking about the data, making data-informed decisions, but not leading with data, making sure that you're leading with stories and leading with positive messaging and being really solution-oriented. So that's kind of a shift that's happened in the housing landscape around how we talk about housing. So we'll be including that change and new recommendations in session 1, actually. So I just wanted to go through the sessions super quickly and just highlight a couple of things. Session 1, the Lower Cape housing landscape, as usual, is going to be our kind of intro course for people who are new to housing or new to boards and committees. We will talk about data. The Housing Commission will be there. We will talk about messaging, as I just said. But something that we haven't really talked about before, and what I've noticed is kind of the secret sauce, is leadership. So what does strong municipal leadership look like when it comes to housing, and how can we be creating sort of leadership units within a town to make sure that someone is making sure that your housing production is getting done? If you have a housing specialist on staff, or if you have housing staff like they do in Provincetown and Brewster, then that person is usually the person doing that. Otherwise, it's a town planner. If you have both, it can be very challenging to coordinate different groups, different boards and committees who all care about housing, but maybe they're kind of doing different things. So leadership, we think, is a key thing to talk about. Session 2 is our planning session. Similar to last year, we're going to be talking about why having a community engaged planning process is really important. This obviously has to do with creating a housing production plan, but not only housing production plans. A local comprehensive plan is also a really great opportunity to have a participatory planning process. So if you came to our community engagement advanced training in June, you probably have a taste of what that looks like. Session 3, again, is our zoning session. Like I said, we're going to be talking about open space residential development, and Judy Barrett will be doing that session, and she's fabulous. So that will be a really fun one. Session 4 is something totally different. So I said we're following a development timeline, right? You assess your needs, you talk about the needs, you make a plan, you think about your zoning, and then before you get into development, there are a lot of things that you can be doing to make sure that your town is well positioned to take advantage of whatever comes up, development or otherwise. So we call this kind of the menu of options of things that towns can be doing to support the year-round community. We'll be talking a lot about intramunicipal coordination and leadership, but also how to strengthen your housing trust. We have some great examples here on the Cape of towns that are being creative with finding revenue streams for their affordable housing trust. So we'll be doing some case studies. Orleans, for example, their 1% for housing is something that we're going to be going through in detail because there are several other towns that are trying to replicate that. So we'll be talking about other revenue streams that are coming down the pipeline that we can be paying attention to and allocate them for housing and infrastructure, as well as incentives for residents, incentives for developers, and kind of, like I said, all of the other wraparound things that towns can be doing to support housing solutions. Session 5, this is kind of the development part 1 session. We're going to be using the Village at Nauset Green in Eastham as a case study, because it's the furthest along of the recent developments, and it's actually getting leased up soon, and it's really nice to not just talk in abstractions, but to have a concrete example to be speaking about. So Eastham has agreed to let us showcase their development, and we'll be using that as a case study for sessions 5 and 6. So in session 6, we'll be talking about affordable housing design, why it doesn't look anything like what people think it does. That it can be beautiful, and the economic feasibility of development being an important thing for municipalities to understand. The ABCs of the development timeline, creating a development strategy and budget. This isn't something that I'm really seeing on the Cape at all, but it's something that's happening off Cape where trusts are actually developing. I'm working with Harwich on doing this, actually, where trusts are developing what's called an action plan, which is very different from a housing production plan. An action plan is an implementation plan. So it says exactly what you're going to do, when you're going to do it, and how much money you need to get it done. So when you have a plan like that and a development strategy that goes with it, you decide what are the needs of the community, what do you need to build, and what are the resources that you need to be allocating and finding now so that you can actually complete that plan. So that's a development strategy, and we'll be talking about that in session 5, along with approaches to site selection and how to dispose of land. And then session 6 is where we wrap up development. We'll be doing a tour of the village at Nauset Green. We'll be talking about pre-development, which I know you guys are in the middle of right now. Developing a request for proposals, which I think you'll be further along at that point. And then thinking about, well, being really clear about the municipality's roles and the developer's roles. That's a moment where towns can get a little messed up and things can get a little complicated, but as long as everyone understands their role, things can go really smoothly. And then what is the municipality's ongoing role? Certainly the town is not involved in construction, for example, but the town does have a role in monitoring the affordability of units in perpetuity, hopefully. So that's kind of a soup to nuts of what we're going to be covering. Again, this year we're going to be doing our post-institute town wrap-ups. We're going to figure out a different format that's useful because we don't want to do the same thing twice. They're printed in your brochure. The dates are already set. And then we will have our fall Outer Cape peer group meeting the week after the Institute is completed. So I think it's the 14th. And just a heads up, something that we're going to be discussing in that meeting is Provincetown's recent housing strategies report. So I'm not sure if you're aware, they had an economic development report, a study done by Comoy & Associates, and the one thing that came out was, surprise, housing. So they actually ended up doing a separate housing strategies report, and the number one priority there was regional collaboration. So they are looking to partner with other Outer Cape towns around housing development. So we're going to have a discussion around how to get that going during our peer group meeting. I think that's all so the other last thing I wanted to say is just, you've been at the Institute and you've been part of the various pieces of the program. The content is certainly a great reason to come, but the other thing that you don't see in your brochure is just the social capital that you're building across towns and within town, right? Laying the groundwork for regional collaboration and also just getting on the same page and being more coordinated within the town. So that's all I'm going to say.
Well, thank you. CDP and you have been really instrumental in changing and improving the way housing is looked at and created. I mean, you've done a great job. These institutes are really good, very thorough. Any questions, comments from the board? Yes, Justina?
Which meeting did you say that you'll be doing, you'll be going over some of Provincetown's recent activity?
So that's going to be the fall Outer Cape peer group meeting.
The peer group meeting,
So
thanks.
separate from the Institute, separate but related.
Right.
And the date is in the brochure.
Great, thanks.
Mm-hmm.
I was just wondering if the focus is only on affordable housing or?
No.
Okay,
No.
other housing
And that reminds me, I
opportunities,
didn't mention something else. No, when we're talking about housing, we're talking about housing for people at all income levels, including affordable housing. And we're talking about planning, we're talking about developing a housing supply strategy for everyone, not just, I don't want to say not just, including affordable housing.
Yeah.
The one thing I forgot to mention is that you do not have to sign up for all 6 sessions this year. You can do a la carte.
Great.
Thank you.
Good, good. And economic development, that kind of trickles down, and you guys do, the CDP does that too, so it's been improving. I think it's had an effect on the Lower Cape, right?
Definitely.
Yeah, it's been good. Thank you.
Thanks.
Thank you. Thanks for coming all the way here and
Thank you
waiting.
Thank you for
And
waiting, yeah.
Yeah. You never know what's going to happen.
That's positive.
Well, so the next 2 items under business, Select Board Marijuana Policy Review and Marijuana Cultivation Host Community Agreement has been postponed.
Yes.
So,
And, Madam Chair?
yes.
Yeah, I really wanted to wait on our policy because the questions in Blueprint had not been answered yet.
Right.
Yeah, good.
Yeah, so we're done, so we will postpone that until
Yeah.
when it's all ready, and Town Council has looked at it too. All right, no questions on that, right?
None.
So moving on to the review of the draft 2021 budget policy. Is this the first year that this has been done?
No, every year.
It seems like it's just really thorough, or did you write this up?
Yeah.
Yeah.
A lot of it stays the same
Stay-
from year to year.
yeah.
You just look at different things that you want to change
Yeah.
each year. But
Yeah, and that's very, very well done, I think.
Okay.
Is there any discussion?
Yeah, a bunch of things. So I couldn't find my glossary of terms from the state about financial terms. So what is an
Use your phone.
unclassified account?
Unclassified account usually comes in is usually your insurance, your health insurance, your retirement assessment, your property insurance. Those things all go under the unclassified accounts.
Ah. Okay. So the other thing is, there are all these bullets on the first page, and there's whenever possible and reasonable staff will cultivate productivity, et cetera, and then whenever possible and reasonable staff will investigate regional opportunities. Would this be a place, it was in my goals a couple of years ago, and I was happy to see that the departments did that and did it anyway, and maybe did it a little more. But could there be a bulletin there about looking for grants, or is that not appropriate? Because think how many times
Yeah.
our departments have found grants to really save us money.
It's kind of part
So-
of their job application or job description quite often.
It is, but to have that as part of the, budget plan.
Overall
That they
plan.
push for it. And then, I have hearts next to a lot of these, but here's a question, and this is me not doing my homework, but maybe the rest of us don't know this. On the last page, to maintain the Finance Committee Reserve Fund, blah, blah, blah. And the last two paragraphs in this document, did we appropriate the 97,580 and the 878,213 amounts? Did we just appropriate that in town meeting?
So the two different answers here. The Finance Committee reserve does get appropriated at town meeting. That'll be included in the budget. But what you're seeing there is the goal for 2021. So we haven't done that yet.
Okay, that's where I was confused.
And the free cash reserve, or free cash balance, is something we internally strive for. So it is not something that town meeting has to vote on. Town meeting has to vote on anytime there's an expenditure from that. But we as staff, both in the administrative offices and the accountant's office, work to have that as our goal for the free cash balance.
Thank you. And so this is the 2021 97,580 would be at our next annual town meeting.
Yes.
Thank you. Thank you.
Anyone else? Okay, there's no motion, but thank you for doing this.
Yeah, we'll bring it
More
forward to you at your
explanations.
next meeting. So if you have any questions between now and then, just let me know, and we'll bring it forward to you for approval at our next meeting.
Great, thank you. Now, review the fiscal year 2021 annual budget and 2020 ATM schedule. Any questions, comments about our future? Plan your vacations wisely.
Sure.
No, it's pretty standard.
It is.
Yeah.
Anybody?
It is a pretty standard schedule.
Yeah.
We just look at, when weekends occur and stuff like that as far as when we're changing. I will point out to you that Janet and I have both had conversations with the Finance Committee Chair about the fact that the board likes to have them there as a joint meeting when we go over the budget, to hear what questions they ask and stuff like that. I think they're going to do that again this year. They're not looking to approve the budgets during that joint meeting.
Yeah.
They still want to do that in a separate meeting where they're able to dig down a little bit deeper, but I think they are going to be there at a meeting in December to have a joint meeting with you.
I would appreciate that, and I respect the way they work, but I have to say, I went to a lot of their meetings, because we didn't do it so well jointly last year. And I learned a lot, and I hope they dig deep right here, because it really influenced my vote, a lot of their questions, in a good way, so I hope they don't keep it all to themselves while they're here. That's the
Hoard
point.
it.
Yeah.
Madam Chair.
Yes, Kathleen?
Through you to Mr. Hort, when did we decide we were moving the time for the select board meetings?
Daylight savings.
Daylight savings, which I think is
The
November.
first meeting in November,
Yeah,
Meeting in
because
November.
daylight savings time either starts or ends on November 3rd.
yeah.
So
I
it's
looked
the
it up
first
today,
meeting in
too.
November will start at 6 o'clock.
Thank you.
So that's the 12th.
Okay. No, what's the 12th?
Yeah.
Oh, the Board of
in
Selectmen's
November.
meeting.
Yeah.
Okay, any other questions, comments from the audience? Okay, how about the Select Board goals update? Any comments? I mean, we'll continue to talk about these
I
on a
did
regular
put
basis.
newly consolidated sheets at your seats there. That includes everybody's goals that they sent me in one
Yes.
document under this different categories. They may not be as detailed as the ones that you individually sent me, Helen, but they're all there.
I went, I go and read correspondence, and I have to say, I did ask Courtney, without screaming at her, very, very deferentially, to give me the ones I didn't have already. I had mine, obviously, my personal goals, and I had Janet's from last time. But I didn't have Justina, Mike, and Kathleen.
Didn't we get them?
No.
We didn't get Justina's because they came in late, but.
No, but the point is,
Okay.
it wasn't in our packet, and I've said this now every time. I really treasure knowing exactly what the words that the rest of us used. Because
I agree.
sometimes there's this,
I have mine, and I feel the same way, Helen.
So
I did include, I mean, if you want to compare yours individually to what I put on that paper, it was a big copy and paste job, so it's pretty similar. A lot of you have the same goals. So I added your initials to the end
Yeah.
of them. I tried to keep as much particular language in there as I could. For the record, the last meeting, we had Kathleen's and Janet's
Yeah.
and Helen's. So I was waiting on Mike and Justina, who got me theirs this week. That's why they were not included,
Yeah.
but they are now. So if you would like the individual copies of the goals, I'd be happy to provide them to you.
that would be great. And, you know,
Helen, you don't need mine because,
I've got yours.
I want yours, Justina.
Justina's
Oh.
were the simplest ones to
wait,
add in.
it's on here.
I've got it all.
Yeah, well, my wording wasn't different because I think that brevity is the sign of good writing.
Isn't, yeah.
So I copied Courtney's brevity.
So aside from all this, is there anything that we want to discuss since we've been here over 2 hours already? Do we want to postpone a lot of discussion on this, or is there something that stands out that somebody wants to mention?
I would
Madam
just-
Chair, I've prepared a speech.
Okay, all right,
Oh, God. Okay.
good. Go for it.
Joke.
Oh,
No,
g-
oh, okay.
oh, no, I was ready. So, Madam Chair, I would like to add my initials on Courtney's excellent summary, which I enjoyed, because it gives you, kind of a tally. But can we look at that page and just pencil in, under property and buildings, I'd like to add my initials to bike trails and lanes path? Please? It is not. And then, under environment, this is the only summary that Courtney did that wasn't specific enough. Under environment, land use, HMW, it's work with the National Park Service to look at land swaps. I was very specific about that. And then I'd like to add my initials to, under general, to including bike trails and parking areas. I'd like to add it to Mike DeVasto's thing. So I'm adding my initials to three things, sorry.
So I just assume that when we see this list, we all are in agreement that we need to work on them and that we're all
Yeah.
part of it. One thing I would like to discuss at possibly a work meeting, we often talk about flood mitigation, climate mitigation. I would really like to see details. What do we mean? Storm drainage, which is a state mandate, do we want to start putting up revetments, berms? I mean, I just, I think that it needs to be clear so that DPW, planning board, everybody can start thinking about what we need.
Well, Madam Chair, if I may, I think that we would also involve the NRAB, the Natural.
Yep.
Resources Advisory Board.
Conservation
Yeah,
Commission,
and,
yeah.
I think it's a conversation that, needs to be had with many of the department heads.
Yeah, so this would be a good work committee theme. Yeah,
Madam
I agree.
Chair?
DPW,
Madam
Harbor
Chair?
Master. Mhm.
So number 6 on my select board goals is include sea level rise and climate change when considering all long-term land use decisions, period, every time.
Yeah.
That means every single department and every single regulatory board and every single, committee like the NRAB, to echo what, every single thing that comes before them, that has to come up too.
Yeah, so this should be
Because it's happening.
formulated at a work meeting.
I think it should be a policy.
Well, that's what I mean by
Well,
formulated.
Point of order, are we going to go through the
It
goals?
is there's some state mandates, so, but
Point of
yes.
order.
The global mayor of Covenant, so that it should be what we're doing all the time.
Yes.
And
Point of
no-
order-
what- Sorry, I'm going to let you go. I just interrupted you. I was going
How
to
many
stop
times
everybody
can you
else
say
from
point of
interrupting you. But that all department heads are on board. We've got to get all department heads and committees on board. Yes, Justina?
I think that there's a lot of great material here, and perhaps we could put down under future topics that we go through the goals at a
Yeah.
work session, because I think
Yeah.
we're all tired tonight, and I'm not going to remember half the stuff that people are bringing up.
Good point. Okay, so
I've
good.
got one
Good
thing.
job. What?
Just while I remember it, there's a coastal resiliency grant that's been taken advantage of by like almost every other town on the Cape besides Wellfleet.
I
And
think we've gotten.
I don't think we've
I
got,
don't
unless
know.
we just got it
I don't know.
recently, we haven't applied
Yeah.
for it. There's never been an application from this town. And it's,
Really?
and it's exactly to deal with planning,
Yeah.
sea level rise,
health
mitigation in
agents
coastal
on it.
communities.
Yeah, I think
Hillary's
somebody
on it.
is, but so that's why we all have to be on the same page.
Right.
And that's, again, not us, but good point. So make a note of that, and, good, maybe that can be within a few months, we could do this mitigation, land use, climate change for a work meeting. So that leads me to our next thing, which is, are we done with goals because we're going to take them individually and talk about them more? Okay. Topics, we'll go to, just while we're on it, topics for future discussion, which is why I'm saying this, is it's been suggested that we schedule a did you have something to add? Okay. Because these work meetings, we go, yeah, we need a work meeting, but then we never schedule it. And then we got to do back and forth emails on who's got the right time.
Let's just schedule it at the
Exactly.
meeting every
That's
time.
No, what we're going to do is schedule this is what I want to do, not we're going to do it. Schedule a regular meeting, being once a month, possibly, my thought was that we already meet on Tuesdays, it's already in our brain, that we have the third Tuesday and we meet at, say, in the afternoon, 1, 2, or 3, so that department heads can easily come. And it's scheduled on a regular basis like that, so that the townspeople are aware of it.
My only problem is that
Tied.
Sorry.
Tied.
Yeah, my
We know,
schedule
we know.
changes dramatically,
Yeah.
and it could fall on that, but, and I'm not so sure that we need to meet every month for a work meeting.
We
I don't know how
we
everybody
do
feels,
we
but-
do it at this point.
At this
We
point
can
in the
always
season.
cancel, certainly, certainly in the spring.
Yeah, I
or
don't have a
whatever
problem with it, but I would like to not miss them every,
time. I agree.
time,
No, I
it
totally
falls.
support you in your work schedule.
Madam Chair?
Yes.
Mikey, how do you like this? Well, two things. I think it's important to have a standing meeting because of routine. Human beings
we
do
like
well
it.
with routine. And if there's not enough work, we can always give ourselves a vacation.
Yeah,
And
okay.
then what if we, knowing that the meeting was then, you could red flag the ones that are a problem for you regarding tides, and we'll deal with it.
We can
then.
change, yeah, okay.
Yeah.
You can
So we
either-
do it at the meeting for the following work meeting or something.
Yeah, you can say, gee, because a
If I
lot of
can't
them will,
make it,
a lot of them will be
make
okay.
it. We
Some
want
of
you
them
to-
you won't mind
Yeah,
skipping, and then,
willfully.
then the ones that you want to be there and the tide is a problem, we'll deal with it then.
sure, okay.
Yeah.
I'm fine with that.
Good.
Yeah.
Helen?
I think work meetings are great. You've heard me say this. I wanted them for years. We all have different times when we're busy and we can't do it. I would like to have work meetings and have them be fairly concentrated and have them those months when we have 3 weeks between meetings. That happens a few times a year.
Okay.
And the thing is that I also want to have them here, to book this room, and to have it be in a venue that isn't this kind of, because if people, we should treat them like regular off-schedule meetings. They may have a different kind of flavor in the way we talk, but every single thing we do and say has to come under the same set of restrictions.
So this is my suggestion after I hear from Tim, is we have the administration look into, be nice, this is a lovely room, we have had work meetings here, but to look at the COA schedule to see what time, if there's a regular time that's available, because this place is often used, and that we don't have to make a decision tonight. I just threw out the Tuesday as an example, but we can all forward our favorite times or best times. And again, it's flexible, we're all flexible. And see if there can be a date or how frequently we want to do it. I think for now, once a month is a good idea.
Yeah, Madam Chair, respectfully to Helen, I think the whole point of sitting differently across the table from each other in a more relaxed setting, it is televised, it is subject to open meeting, it is open to the public, but it's a more relaxed format to me where we don't have to sit in this horseshoe, and I think it's nice when Dana participates, and I don't think we're asking for an additional select board meeting, we're asking for a working meeting, and those are some of the differences that I think have made them successful and more relaxed.
We had one here where we sat in a circle. Let's hear from Tim first, if this is on this subject.
I'm sorry to take this time now. I know it's been a long night, but future discussions, I heard you talk about grants. I'm not sure how it works in this state, but we hired a specialist that does nothing but grants in the state of Florida. He got us $1.1 million last year. We have over $400,000 in grants this year, and we've paid him about $16,000 or $18,000 last year for that, and probably paid him $14,000 this year. And then lobbyists, we have a lobbyist that goes to the state capitol during the hearings, and he got us $4 million a few years ago. They're about to get us another $5.7 million, and they got us $360,000 so far now, and we pay him $48,000 a year. So there is a cost involved, but when you're talking about $10 million over 3-4 years that he's gotten us, sometimes it's well worth putting that money out. So I just want to throw that out. Maybe you should look at that and see how it works.
Yeah,
Thank
I
you.
think we're always looking at it, but I think it's got to be, whatever.
Yeah.
Okay, are we back to work meeting?
Yeah.
Yeah, I had my hand up.
Okay.
You go.
Yeah, okay. The work meetings, I agree with Justina completely. They're different meetings. Like, it's not that, they're still subject to the open meetings law, but that does not mean that they have to be treated the same exact way as this. The format's different. We're trying to work things out. And I personally don't think they should be filmed, just because I don't want people to be inhibited by whatever they may overthink about being on television and repeated. I think that working meetings are open to the public, they're posted, there's minutes taken, they can be audio recorded. If you guys want to film them, that's fine with me. I personally don't see the necessity to film
yeah.
the working meetings. Obviously, we comply with the open meetings law, you know?
Yeah, and work meetings
That's just how
are-
I feel
yeah.
about it. I don't like anyone feeling like they are stopping themselves from saying what they
Yeah.
might be thinking because of whatever reason of, stumbling over words because it's going to be repeated on TV. I know you don't feel the same way, Helen, but
So
it does create a different atmosphere to have a TV camera in the room.
So I hear you, and I agree, and we can discuss it. The thing that I want to get tonight is not setting a time, not setting a date, but agreeing that we should meet once a month on a regular basis, so people say, third Tuesday of the month, there's going to be a work meeting. Courtney had her hand up.
Yeah, as far as setting the schedule goes, if what might be easiest for Dan and I to figure this out, and as far as making it regular, at least for October, November, and December, if you guys can give us dates that you're not available, you're not around, the tides don't work out for you to meet in the middle of the day or the late afternoon,
Okay, yeah.
then we can kind of check off those dates that don't work and come to a smaller window of things that do work. And it may not be regular, but we can look ahead and say, we're going to have a meeting on this date in October, this date in November, and that date in November and
Okay,
December.
that would be a start. I do
And
think,
also-
I think
I
regularity
do need to
would
let the
be
media
great.
committee know when we need to record it.
You do what?
I do need to let Mia know when we have to
Well,
have it
that's
recorded.
the other thing, is she's got to have the time, even though, I mean, she's getting busier and busier because everybody has their meetings recorded, and that's another aspect. She is paid for it. Yes, Helen, is this about scheduling, or is this about
I have something to say,
videotaping?
Janet. And
Well, I
I
want to
want
finish up one
Yes.
topic.
I want to reassure our two newest members. I completely understand not loving the video, but you get used to it really quickly. I've been videoed, since 2003. Do I like it? No. And then I have to go, the videos are essential for checking the minutes in a way that no audio recording is.
Yeah, and audio recordings can technically be deleted after the minutes have been approved. So once the minutes are approved, I can delete those audio recordings. I do keep them. I'm not required to, though. The videos stay forever. So that's just another thing to keep in mind.
Really,
So I just want to clarify, we're not talking about the details, we're just talking about, does everybody want to schedule a regular meeting? That's what I want to hear first.
say something?
Yes, you may.
I, because of my schedule is so tight, I would prefer that I'm just told it's the third Tuesday of every month at this time.
Okay.
I can't do that sliding scale thing.
If that, yeah.
The other thing is, I really enjoy these work meetings. We've had, I believe, 3 of them so far.
Yeah.
It's a much more intimate conversation amongst all of us, and I like the basement of Town Hall. Call me crazy, but that seems to work for these work meetings, and I hope that they will stay there.
It's nice and easy, yeah. It's easy, we don't have to worry about, reserving this. So Courtney and Dan will look at, and I want to add to that, work meetings, there are no votes taken, no decisions made.
Madam Chair, I think we should use a meeting for whatever we need to use it for.
Oh, good.
In other words, we're going to be acting, whether we vote or not. The point is, we also can schedule the meetings. I'm all for having it be, regular.
Whatever works best for
But,
everybody.
but if we don't have anything to do at the work meeting, it can just be one agenda item that we could put on the
Right,
regular
that's
meeting.
what we're
Let's
planning.
do that. But I think that we should be able to use that time because it's
Okay, use it for what?
anything the board needs to do at that time.
Yeah,
But point of order, weren't we going to move on from discussing the details of the meeting?
yes. So Courtney and Dan will come up with some, check with Kathleen and Mike and the tide charts, and, yeah, I think, and it may be slow, but we will sooner or later get a regular meeting going, so thank you. Moving on to Town Administrator's Report. Questions, Kathleen?
Madam Chair, through you to Mr. Hort, 2 dates here with regard to a zoning issue with a resident Have you met and have you had any kind of,
Yes, I sat in a meeting between the building inspector and the residents who brought this to our attention last Thursday, I believe it was. And they are on the same path now, and we think we've got a resolution here. So the property in question has started the construction, and they're moving fairly quickly on it. The container that is kind of blocking the way, Justin was going to ask them if they could move it to the other side of where the construction is happening right now. So the property owners were happy with what Justin was proposing.
Dan, my heartfelt thanks to you. Thank you.
Mostly to Justin. He worked this out with him.
Thank you.
Good. Any other questions, comments on the, yep, Justina?
Madam Chair, it's my understanding that container unit was legal and had a building permit on it.
Yes, it was.
I mean, I know they're moving it, but
Yep.
he wasn't in a violation.
He was not in a violation, but they're trying to work it out so that everybody's happy.
That's great.
I have a point of order. Is it in the select board's purview to bring up issues like this that are zoning issues
Well,
on a personal basis?
Because it was in the town administrator's report, we could ask a question, and it was brought up last week.
I
There's a
just mean
letter to us.
Bring it up in
yeah.
general. I mean, is it our purview to?
Yeah, I want to speak,
Okay.
Madam
to
Chair.
publicly
The
raise
facts
these
were different
issues?
than in the letter, so I'm not going to go into the details. It's late at night, but I would put that on a future agenda because I think when letters are put forward that set one
Right, it's
one side of the
correspondence.
story and then somebody's name comes up in front of the cameras, it probably would want to avoid that.
Madam Chair?
Yeah,
To answer Mike's thing, this came in correspondence, which is why
Right, I
we
said
sort
that.
of had to discuss it. It's not our purview to make a decision about it, you know, right?
Sure.
Yeah, so it came up, and we should give evidence and check in with each other when we get something, and I'm about to do that when we get to correspondence about something else.
Sure, I guess my question was more that, is this something that would normally be handled by, like, building
ZBA.
department or ZBA, and it's not really our purview to bring this up
right.
in a meeting? It's a neighbor, basically a neighbor dispute. I mean, that's what it comes down to. And I'm not sure if it's our purview to be bringing these up, like,
Janet?
even if they are letters of correspondence, we don't bring every
So-
letter up.
So, well, if it's, yeah, but it was in correspondence, so that's how this
We
particular.
can bring it up. I'm not arguing
We
that we
don't,
can
we
or
don't
can't.
usually bring up, we don't bring up complaints that the planning board and the Board of Health and/or the building inspector takes care of, but there are things like noise complaints that come before us, so we do address them, but we don't address them in detail.
Okay.
Is that good?
Yep, I just, wanted to.
No, I hear what you're
Clarify. I
saying.
wanted some
I hope that
clarification.
answered it. Yes.
Madam Chair, I forget when we did topics for future discussion. At some point, I would like to put that, a policy of how to handle complaints onto the agenda,
Yeah.
because when unflattering facts or unfactual facts get brought up against a resident, they get upset.
Yep. Okay, anything else about the town administrator's report? Moving on to minutes. I
No,
have.
topics for
Oh, topics, okay,
and
darn, okay.
correspondence.
Can I go first, Helen?
You may.
There you go.
I'd like to bring up as an agenda item, what we're looking for with regard to a water consultant and, where we are at that, and if we could have a discussion. Next, do we have a plan for the town hall lawn and tree maintenance? Can we get the Arbor Committee and the group that Ginny Parker headed up together to, give us some idea of a plan for town hall and the maintenance of the trees, and, bring the community in on that discussion. Third, I would like the select board, and I don't know if we've talked about it or if we've developed a policy. We've talked about taping meetings tonight. I would like it, and I know we're getting some resistance from a couple of our boards or committees, if you will. I'd like us to make a policy that says it is mandatory, that if you're going to serve on a board for the town of Wellfleet, that your meetings are going to be taped.
Sorry, Kathleen, I just wanted to say, Mia did come a couple meetings ago with the policy on meeting recordings. We can have her back. I'm not sure as far where in the process it is. I think you guys voted to send it off to department heads for review, so Dan and I can look at the next steps in the process, and Mia has asked when she can come back with that information as well, so I can
Okay,
definitely put that
good.
on a.
It came to my attention by somebody that the fact that one board does not want to have their meetings taped because information coming up during those meetings should be considered private or confidential is erroneous. Any board that's operating in the town of Wellfleet, for the town of Wellfleet, has to have transparency.
I agree.
And their meetings should be taped. It's not correct in saying, oh, they don't want to speak, or, this is very private information. This is a public meeting. They're a board that's appointed by the Board of Selectmen, and I think we should develop a policy that it's going to be mandatory. If we get a board that disagrees with that and everybody jumps ship, we'll replace them.
If it were that easy, but yeah, I hear what you're saying. And I do think that it is the future. I mean, this has been talked about for a long time, but I mean, everything's videotaped now, so. But I do want to remind people that even if they're not videotaped, all meetings are audio taped, so.
We'll have a chance to discuss that policy, right? Because I don't actually
Yes,
agree with
yeah.
Kathleen.
Yeah, that can be a work meeting. Go ahead.
And
did-
also,
oh,
fourth on my
okay,
list
sorry.
is, at some point, I hope in October or November, you'll hear from the 95 Lawrence Road
Yeah.
Task Force, and they'll present what I hope will be a very detailed RFP to the Board of Selectmen. It'll just be a discussion item, a presentation of all the work that's been done to, get this property developed.
Yeah, no, I'm looking forward to it. Helen?
Yes.
You're done, Kathleen, right?
So,
Yeah.
one of my future concerns was exactly what Kathleen said. I think that we should not only have a policy, but it would be nice to even have it be a general bylaw, but that's more difficult, that everything gets videoed. And hey, did we all hear what Courtney Butler said about you don't throw the discs away? And I
Okay,
can't.
so you just
so
want to
that's
put on
number
a
one.
future concern that you
Yeah.
want to tape
Yeah,
meetings?
and
Okay.
that we
Okay.
write a polite letter to,
Point
and
of
then
order,
I've
we're-
got other
Wait,
future
yeah, we're not
concerns.
discussing it, we're just saying
Yeah.
what we're talking about,
Yeah.
okay?
I've got,
Good.
okay,
Okay, go ahead.
second thing. Our animal control officer is no longer
Yep.
with us, and I am concerned, maybe Dan Hort can answer this and make it go away as a future concern, that we don't have an animal control officer who
Good.
is legally
Good.
designated as such, because you need that, and I'm really concerned about that.
Yeah, so we can ask Chief Facette find out where that stands.
So, a third thing, what is the story, and can we know about it and have it on a future agenda, about being able to recharge electric vehicles at Town Hall? I'm not sure that
Yeah,
that
they're
can-
not, are they hooked up yet?
We're waiting for
Okay.
Okay, so maybe just a report on that. Okay, waiting for, okay, so the last thing has to do with one of the topics that came up tonight, which is, I brought up quite a while ago, can we please fix the fence and adjust the boundary between the Masons and that town parking lot down by the horse trough? you know?
Yeah.
In other words, the
Yeah.
fence is not quite where it should be,
It
and,
did get fixed.
Yeah.
It did?
Yeah.
It's been resurveyed.
Since the.
oh, this all
sometime
happened.
in June or
So I
July.
just,
Yeah.
no, it wasn't fixed this summer.
Yes,
Yeah.
It is? The split rail fence?
yes.
Then I didn't notice, thank you. Future concern, go
Done.
away.
Good. Okay, anybody else, future concerns? I think we should have a brief report on dredging, bring everybody up to date on that. And, Mike?
I just think we should have a discussion about Article 47 and the request for the Select Board to write a letter about the bike path.
So there's going to be, yeah, okay. Whatever. Yeah, there's going to be, the DOT is going to come and present a new plan.
In October.
Sure.
So, yeah, so, yeah.
Right.
But
we're not
yeah.
discussing it right now,
Yeah.
but I would like to discuss before that as an agenda item, if we can.
Yeah, Madam
Okay.
Chair, I agree with Mike that needs to be talked about.
We need to address it.
Okay, so that's plenty for future discussion. Can we move on to minutes?
No, correspondence.
We already talked about correspondence. Go ahead.
We got a very, to me, disturbing letter from somebody about a dog who, today,
Yep.
6 times in a row, was shrieking and barking. In other words, an animal in some kind of distress, probably who had been left alone. And this is a noise violation, too.
Yeah, so what do you
So-
want to do with it?
Well, I, identifying myself as just me, wrote back and sent, the person who reported this
So do you want to
said, "Do
discuss
we
the
have-"
bylaw, a noise bylaw, and have the police
We have a
discuss
noise
it?
bylaw.
Does it include
Yes, in
dogs?
my opinion, it does. I need to finish. So I wrote back to him as an individual, and I copied him with what there was from the state, and also from our noise bylaw. And I would like to have this included in the record for this meeting, because we do have a way for the police, even if we don't have an animal control officer, to respond to this and to enforce it. And I'm going to ask that we copy the board, that the board be copied with it, and that it become part of the public record, so that, even though I'm not reading it out loud, my response to this individual who very kindly to the dog blew the whistle.
Madam Chair?
Yes.
I'm very uncomfortable with this, and I'm uncomfortable because it mirrors what happened last time, where somebody has a problem, and it comes in correspondence, so we can't talk about it. Then it goes into the record, and I don't know the facts or the other side of the story, and I think maybe this has to wait till we have a policy on introducing citizen complaints into the correspondence, because in the last letter that came before the board, the facts were wrong there were missing facts that were significant enough to disturb me. And I suspected as much because I knew the individual in question. So I really would like not to have these kinds of lacking the facts issues kind of flaring up in correspondence. I think it leaves me with 10 questions now.
Well, I think I hear what you're saying. I get it. I agree. I agree with Helen. I think so things can be in correspondence. We are not getting the correspondence reports that we used to get for the last year and a half.
Who's our correspondence clerk?
Well, Mike is now, but you were before, and Justina was before, and you three dropped the ball, as far as I was told. But that's another story.
Yeah.
So we used to get a full correspondence report, and we haven't had one for a long time. So moving on from that, it is part of our meeting. The point is that when we don't have the information to discuss this particular correspondence, but what really should be done when it's a noise violation, it should be referred to the police. And that's it. There's no more to discuss. You report it to the police.
But Madam
and
Chair,
that's
I'm
it.
not sure it is a noise violation, and I'd
Well,
like
so
more
the
facts.
police would investigate. They would go knock on the door, whatever they do, and investigate
Well,
it
in
and
the
get the
last
facts.
correspondence, there was a police report involved in that situation, an ongoing sort of situation between neighbors, and only one side got brought up, but it came in under correspondence. So it's like, had I been the person accused falsely, I would have been sort of upset. So I think we have to be a little careful here.
Well, the letter wasn't read out loud, so, I mean.
Right.
Well, then it was discussed.
So my point is that these are things that get referred to the police. We're not the noise police, okay?
Excuse me.
So,
Madam Chair.
and there's been other times that there's been noise violations.
Madam Chair.
Yes.
We have a really good policy. I bring it up regularly. It's
Right.
one of my favorite policies.
So how does it refer to this one?
Because this is why I'm going to send my response to this person into the public record, because I cited our noise bylaw, which in my opinion covers this.
What was it that covered
And I
it?
have to also say that cruelty to animals, my favorite policy, we are supposed to make sure that laws and regulations get implemented. We don't act on something like this, the police does, but apparently, and we all got this letter, this person sent it to the whole board, I think today or yesterday.
Today.
The police somehow thought that they had no way of enforcing it, and they do.
Yeah, they do. So it is a
And-
noise complaint is referred to the police.
Yes, but the
And-
point is, we need to make sure that the police then addresses this, because the idea of an animal being neglected for whatever reason, I want to know more. And maybe the animal is not being neglected, we don't know, but it needs to be looked into.
Well, Madam Chair, though, I got the letter and had a different response, and I'm not going to go into the details, but I think in any situation when a citizen complains, the first step is to find if there's another side of the story, or, I don't know why these things are coming out in a public forum, and I'm uncomfortable with the police suddenly being called because a dog barked. It just, like, we're starting to live in a town where people want to control what happens in other people's houses if it bothers them. How do we even know the facts?
Okay, so there is a noise bylaw. You look at that. If it's in violation of the noise bylaw, it gets referred to the police, and if we get more complaints or consistent complaints, but we are not in charge of saying anything to either of the individuals. You can answer the person who wrote the letter, but
We're not enforcing.
we're not an enforcement agency, so we're going to leave it at that, and we refer it to the police. And the police, that's their job, and that was the animal control officer's job, and that's why Helen probably said, do we have another animal control officer, because Officer Keogh left. So they're very nice, they knock on your door or give you a call, and they're not going to harass you, they're not going to check your house, they're not going to deport you, they're just going to check on it. And then through the laws, we have very good bylaws. If they feel that there may be a problem with the dog or abuse of the dog, then that's a whole nother story too. But that's their job.
But why isn't the citizen just calling the police? Why are we involved?
I don't know why
That
they didn't call the
happened,
police.
and the police could not act on it.
But it's
That's-
like weaponizing.
Okay, so now we're getting into too much information
Yes, you're
here.
right about
No,
that.
well, here's the thing is,
So that-
why does it
Come before us.
precipitate into this conversation? It's up to the police to enforce the bylaws, not us. And I just don't understand why. I think Justine is right. We need to have some vetting of what, constitutes bringing it up at a Board of Selectmen meeting. Not everything gets brought up in correspondence.
we're really at risk of anybody who has a friendship with the Board of Selectmen member or acquaintanceship or feels that one of us might be kind or whatever, that they come to us, and it just should go directly to the police, and I don't think it should have to come in a meeting and take up the time, and
Yeah.
we don't know both sides of the story. We probably don't know the law. The police should be enforcing the bylaw.
Okay, so we're going round and round.
No,
We're going
just-
round and round.
There's a fact here. I have been at dog hearings at the Select Board table.
So we're really getting too far into
Yes,
this.
We are, but the point is that if there is cruelty to animals, and it has been reported to us as
But this
correspondence.
isn't part
That
of-
was
this
not
isn't on the
reported in the
agenda.
correspondence. I did not hear anything about cruelty to an animal, so we're going to drop it, we're going to refer it to the police, and that is how it goes.
I will follow up with Chief Bissett on this.
Yeah, thank you. Anything else under correspondence? Okay, minutes, I just lost my place, but go ahead. Kathleen.
Courtney, I've got some disagreement with page 2 of
Hold on.
the minutes from August the 27th.
Yes.
Well, it's highlighted here in red that I will not be at the September 24th meeting. I really don't think this paragraph captured my comments with regard to the shellfish regulation of removing the gear. First of all, I'm in 100% agreement with the harbor master and the Marina Advisory Committee, not the constable.
Wait, which paragraph is this?
The last one.
Last one.
Last one, okay.
Um,
Okay, so,
I
wait.
might have said something to the effect about the impact that gear has on marine life, but I also mentioned water quality and safety, and that this gear being left out in the winter months could become a liability issue for the town of Wellfleet. So, I mean, I would like you to go back to the tape and do this a little bit more. I don't believe I asked the community to be responsible and respectful. I'm asking the shellfish industry that, you know, this is your gear. This is stuff that you need to be picking up. So anyway, that's the only question I have in those minutes.
Madam Chair?
Okay, yes.
Yeah, and I appreciate attention to detail about these things. Kathleen, I did listen to the video, okay? And I sort of try to work with what the minute taker has chosen to put in, but I left out the water quality and safety. You did say just the community, and what would make it clearer would be if it was the shellfish community.
Shellfish
But I think you just said community,
All
but
right.
that's what you meant. And some of the corrections I give Courtney don't change the content, but sometimes clarify it. So if you added the word shellfish,
Yeah.
that isn't even an amendment,
yeah.
you know?
I'll go back and listen to it, put it in verbatim.
Okay, thank you.
Anything else? I have two, and I'm looking for my second one. But on page 14, Select Board reports, Reinhardt discussed establishing a maintenance dredging plan, saying she met with the harbor master and GEI. I did not meet with GEI.
What was the acronym you provided?
I said that the harbor master gave me a letter from GEI. So I didn't meet with GEI.
So you read the letter?
Yes, and that's what we're having a dredging update on.
Okay, so it would read, saying she met with the harbor master.
That's it, boom. She met with the harbor master.
Okay.
And there's something somewhere, maybe Kathleen will know. Somewhere it says Reinhardt said Bacon recused herself, and I knew Kathleen was not able to come to the meeting and didn't recuse herself. And I'm saying the minutes show that she recused herself, but I didn't say that, and if I did, I misspoke, so.
Where is that?
I'm looking for it.
And what was the topic?
I don't know. What was the topic?
When it came to the Hilda Trust
Yes,
discussion.
that's right.
Janet said to the audience that was here that I had recused myself that evening.
Oh, that's right. Yeah, okay, so I did misspeak. Okay, that's right.
Is that in here?
Yeah,
Where?
yeah. I
Because-
don't know,
yeah.
it's in there, but
Yeah,
it was, I was just going over the whole list of people that weren't here, and I
just
kind of
absent.
put, yeah, she just couldn't be here.
Yeah, and-
But that's my misspeaking, so that is in the minutes.
Yeah, and just so we all know, until we get to another stage with Hilton, I am not reading anything about or listening to videos.
Okay, so
I
this is-
only
this is,
correct,
yeah.
hold on a minute, I'm only in that section, in a section that has to do with Hilton, I only correct typos, okay? So you guys, you
Fine,
want to look at
good.
it and.
Boom,
yeah.
done. All right. Anything else with the minutes?
No. I move to approve the minutes of August 27th, 2019, as amended.
Second.
All in favor? It's unanimous. May I have a motion to adjourn?
I move that we, second,
Second, all in favor?
out of here.
Thank you.
Thank you. Thank you, Courtney.
You still have.